Beneath the moonlit waves, the ocean dreams in silence. There are forests without leaves, cities without sound, only tiny mouths breathing in rhythm with the tide. Each coral polyp, smaller than a grain of rice, is a builder, a poet, a keeper of time. They grow so slowly that centuries pass between their heartbeats, yet they hold the memory of storms, the warmth of vanished suns. Tonight, we drift through 18 quiet wonders, each whispering 10 secrets of the sea. Breathe slowly, the ocean is waiting. From the sand below, pairs of coral antlers rise like the gates of an ancient temple, a quiet city where baby fish hide inside beams of broken sunlight. Beneath the clear shallows of the Caribbean, where sunlight dances like molten gold, the elkhorn coral spreads its wide, branching arms. Each branch curves and divides, reaching outward as if the ocean itself were stretching toward the light. From above, these coral forests resemble the antlers of a great elk, hence the name elkhorn coral. But these are not silent bones. They are living skeletons, made of calcium carbonate, grown cell by millions of tiny coral polyps. Each polyp is a soft, translucent creature no larger than the head of a pin. At night, when the water cools, they open like flowers, extending delicate tentacles to catch drifting plankton. By day, they close and rest, sharing the energy produced by the microscopic algae, zooxanthellae, that live within their tissues. Together, polyp and algae form a perfect partnership. The coral gives shelter and minerals, the algae gift food made from sunlight. This slow communion builds the reef itself, a cathedral of limestone raised by creatures too small to see. If you were to dive among them, you would find an underwater forest of pale gold and bronze. Each branch can grow up to 2 meters long, forming dense thickets where the water hums softly with life. Tiny gobies, juvenile parrotfish, and damselfish weave between the branches. The coral's rough surface shelters them from predators, while the shape of the colony calms the waves, breaking their force, turning chaos into rhythm. Scientists call elkhorn coral an architect species. Without it, entire reef systems collapse. Its broad antlers trap sand, slow currents, and create a foundation for hundreds of other corals to anchor and grow. When an elkhorn dies, its skeleton remains, becoming the frame upon which future generations build. Every branch, every curve, is a memory of persistence. But like many architects of nature, elkhorn coral lives on the edge of fragility. It grows fast, 5 to 10 centimeters a year, a rare speed in coral time, but it is also sensitive beyond measure. A single degree of ocean warming can bleach its tissues white, expelling the algae that feed it. When that happens, the coral starves. It fades, weakens, and breaks. Storms that once passed harmlessly now shatter its brittle frame. Each broken piece drifts with the current, sometimes settling on new sand, clinging, and beginning again, turning fracture into rebirth. This ability to regrow from fragments is one of its quiet miracles. Divers and conservationists now collect these broken branches and replant them, tying them gently to underwater structures until they fuse again with life. Some call this coral gardening, others call it a form of prayer, human hands trying to heal what the ocean still remembers how to make. The colour of elkhorn coral is unmistakable. Under daylight it gleams amber, ochre and honey yellow. In the blue shadow of late afternoon it turns the colour of burnished bronze. When lightning storms roll over the Caribbean, flashes of silver light ripple through the water, and the antlers seem to glow. Ancient sailors believed that such corals guarded the souls of drowned voyagers, holding them close within their branches until the sea grew calm again. In many ways, elkhorn coral is the first foundation of the modern Caribbean. It built the shallow reefs that protect islands, softened the impact of waves, and created lagoons where mangroves and seagrass could thrive. Without it, coastlines would erode, fish nurseries would vanish, and the rhythm of the sea would fall silent. Marine biologists sometimes call it the soul of the mangrove forest offshore. Yet today, more than 95% of elkhorn coral populations have vanished. Disease, pollution, and rising temperatures have erased them from many reefs where they once thrived. The Caribbean, once golden with coral antlers, now lies pale and broken in many regions. But where fragments still cling, life continues. When the moon is bright, you can see small clusters of new growth. tiny fingers of limestone stretching out, shimmering with the faint green of reborn algae. If you listen carefully underwater, there is a hum. Not a sound you hear with your ears, but one you feel with your body. It's the vibration of shrimp snapping, fish grazing, water moving through coral mazes. Elkhorn coral stands there, arms open, feeling every beat of the sea. There is something deeply human in its story. Strength shaped by fragility, endurance carved out of vulnerability. It is a species that knows how to grow fast but must live carefully, that breaks easily yet knows how to rebuild from pieces of itself. When you drift near one, you'll notice the small fish sleeping between its branches. The light flickers through the water like candle flame, painting moving shadows on the coral surface. Every ridge and groove has been polished by centuries of waves, touched by countless lives that passed and returned. It is a sculpture both ancient and alive. In the stillness, the coral does what it has always done. It breathes. Each polyp, invisible to your eyes, inhales the water, filters it, and exhales clarity. The reef around it thrives because of this endless patient exchange. The coral gives structure to emptiness, order to motion, beauty to the unseen. And so the Elkhorn remains, the great builder of Caribbean dreams, a silent witness to the changing sea. Its loss would be like a forest cut from the world, a memory erased from the ocean's mind. But for now, it lives, branch by branch, in places where the water still holds its warmth and the light still shimmers gold. Close your eyes. Imagine you're floating just above a forest of golden antlers. The tide rocks you slowly, the water cools your skin, and the sound of your breath merges with the seas. Each coral below you is alive, dreaming in slow motion. And if you listen, really listen, you might hear the ocean whisper through its branches, "I remember everything." Beneath the still blue, a stone brain dreams, its ridges recording storms, its veins filled with salt and light. Every groove remembers something the ocean once whispered. Imagine diving where the reef drops into the gentle dim of twilight. You descend slowly, following shafts of sunlight that sway like silk ribbons. Below, something round and ridged glows faintly beneath a dusting of sand. It looks like a sculpted brain, massive, intricate, pulsing with shadow and reflection. This is brain coral, the mind of the reef, the memory keeper of the sea. Each groove on its surface is a winding valley, a maze where light becomes gold and blue. Those curved ridges are not stone at all, but the walls built by thousands of coral polyps, each one living inside its own tiny chamber. Together, these microscopic architects form a structure that grows barely a few millimeters a year, yet endures for centuries, sometimes for nearly a millennium. The oldest colonies may have begun their slow creation before the first cathedral rose in Europe, before ink ever met paper. A brain coral can grow as large as a small car, weighing more than a ton. It does not move, but the sea moves around it. Fish circle its curves, crabs crawl between its valleys. Parrotfish graze gently on the algae that cling to its surface, polishing its limestone skin. In the moonlight, a soft fluorescent shimmer runs through its grooves, as if thought itself were passing silently from one polyp to another. The coral's name, Diploria labyrinthiformis, means double-walled maze. The walls you see are the result of twin layers of living tissue separated by a narrow canal. Each pair of walls holds within it the rhythm of life and death, one layer growing, the other slowly hardening into stone. Over hundreds of years, these walls become a record, an unbroken diary of the sea. By cutting thin slices through old colonies, scientists can read the past like rings in a tree. Warm seasons, cold currents, volcanic ash, even the subtle trace of storms. In this way, brain coral is not just alive, it is aware. Not in the human sense, not with nerves or synapses, but with a kind of mineral memory. Every layer it builds encodes the chemistry of the surrounding water. The ratio of oxygen isotopes within its skeleton can tell us when the sea was warmer or cooler, when rain fell or failed. Within the quiet architecture of its body lies the entire climatic story of the Caribbean and the Atlantic, written not in ink but in calcium. When you look closely, you may notice the polyps' gentle symmetry. By day they rest, folded inward like sleeping eyes. At night they awaken, each extending a crown of translucent tentacles to feed. Under ultraviolet light, those tentacles glow faint green or pale pink, forming a halo around each ridge. The reef, at that hour, becomes a field of living lanterns, breathing, pulsing, exchanging energy with the sea. The life of a brain coral is slow but not passive. It must heal, it must resist. When a parrotfish bites too deeply, or a storm cracks a ridge, the living tissue spreads again, sealing the wound with new limestone. Over decades, a damaged section smooths over completely, leaving only a faint scar, a reminder of endurance. Some colonies have survived hurricanes that tore entire islands apart. When researchers return years later, they find the same coral still there, still glowing faintly in the moonlight. Because of this resilience, brain corals are called the anchors of the reef. While faster-growing species like elkhorn build height and shape, brain corals build permanence. They are the foundation stones, the stabilizers of the marine city. Small fish weave through their channels, sea urchins hide within their grooves, even young corals attach to their surfaces to begin new lives. If the reef were a living organism, brain coral would be its heart, slow, steady, patient. Yet this patient creature is now threatened by a fevered world. Rising sea temperatures cause the coral to bleach, expelling the algae that feed it. When this happens, the brain coral turns pale, its ridges glowing white like bone. Without its algae, it cannot grow, and over time, it dies. In some regions of the Caribbean, entire fields of these living brains have fallen silent, eroded into rubble by waves. Still, there are pockets of hope. Small colonies thriving where currents remain cool, protected by shadows or deep water flow. In certain cultures, brain coral is seen as a symbol of wisdom and endurance. In ancient island myths, it was said that each coral held the spirit of a sailor who had listened too long to the sea. Over time, their thoughts became stone, their memories transformed into grooves, their dreams etched in calcium. When you touch the surface, gently with respect, you touch centuries of listening. If one could translate the coral story, it would speak of slowness as strength. In a world of motion, brain coral survives by stillness. It does not chase, it does not flee, it simply endures, layering memory upon memory until time itself becomes part of its body. Imagine, for a moment, floating above such a coral. The sea is calm. The sun flickers through water like liquid glass. Small fish hover near the grooves, moving in perfect rhythm with the tide. A gentle current brushes your skin. The world becomes hushed. You could almost feel the coral's slow breath beneath you, deep and steady, as if the ocean were exhaling through the ridges. At night, the scene transforms. The coral's faint bioluminescence emerges, turning the seafloor into a cosmic landscape. Each groove glows faintly gold or violet. Plankton drift above like dust motes in a cathedral of light. In the distance, the soft crackle of shrimp and the sigh of sand ripple through the water. It is a world that feels endless yet self-contained, a labyrinth that leads not outward, but inward. Scientists sometimes call brain corals the living hard drives of the ocean. Each centimetre of growth records chemistry, light and temperature from the past 1,000 years. They are, quite literally, archives of Earth's climate, preserving what the sky forgets. But they are more than data. They are art. Their surfaces spiral like fingerprints, unique to every colony. If you could place your palm against one, you would feel the grooves curve gently beneath your hand, like the pulse of the sea made solid. And in that touch lies a quiet realization. These beings, older than empires, build beauty not through speed but through patience. They remind us that slowness can be sacred, that endurance can be luminous. So when the waves settle and you drift into that half-sleep that comes before dreaming, picture a massive coral brain resting under the sea. Within its chambers, tiny polyps open and close in time with your heartbeat. Its ridges hum softly, resonating with the pulse of the earth. The coral does not think in words, it thinks in tides. It does not remember in images, it remembers in chemistry. And when you fall asleep tonight, perhaps your dreams too will find that rhythm, the slow, circular thought of the ocean itself, turning forever in silence. There are fires that breathe in air and fires that breathe in salt. Touch this one and the sea will burn you gently. to remind you that beauty and pain share the same pulse. Under the rippling light of shallow tropical water, something gleams like molten metal. At first glance, it seems harmless, a golden veil draped across the reef, glowing softly as fish glide above, but approach too closely and the sea bites back. The sting is invisible, sudden, electric. This is fire coral, a creature named for its burn, a paradox of elegance and danger, where light becomes a weapon and stillness hides heat. Despite its name, fire coral is not a true coral. It belongs not to the stony reef builders, Scleractinia, but to the hydrozoa, a cousin of jellyfish and Portuguese man-o'-war. That shared ancestry gives it its hidden arsenal, countless nematocysts, microscopic harpoons coiled in each cell. When skin brushes against its surface, those harpoons shoot out instantly, releasing venom that burns like acid and lingers like memory. The sting fades after hours, but the awe remains. You never forget the coral that burns underwater. Beneath the microscope, each fire coral polyp is a tiny hunter, crowned with fine tentacles that sense the smallest vibration in the water. They are translucent, nearly invisible, yet deadly precise. By day, they rest inside a golden skeleton of calcium carbonate. By night, they emerge, thousands of glowing filaments drifting upward, catching plankton from the dark. If you could see it under ultraviolet light, you would witness a slow, shimmering field of fireflies trapped in honey. The coral's colour, amber, gold, sometimes orange-red, comes not from heat, but from the symbiotic algae that live within it. Together they form a living lantern. The algae draw sunlight into energy. The coral gives them shelter and minerals. In shallow waters of the Caribbean, the Indo-Pacific, and the Red Sea, fire coral thrives where light is strongest, weaving luminous carpets across rocks and shipwrecks. When viewed from afar, the colonies resemble tangled antlers or waving hands. Their form is fluid, neither plant nor stone, growing outward in lace-like sheets that glint like polished brass. In calm lagoons, they spread flat and wide. On turbulent reefs, they rise like fences intercepting waves. The coral is both fragile and unyielding, its surface brittle, yet its purpose eternal, to build, to protect, to feed. The paradox of fire coral lies in its dual life. It looks serene, but it hunts. It anchors the reef, yet it harms those who touch it. It can be both sanctuary and snare. Small fish hover near its edges, using it as shield from predators who have learned to fear the burn. Within its branches, crustaceans and shrimp build homes, safe from all who cannot bear the sting. The coral gives life through the same force that inflicts pain. Ancient Polynesian myths tell of the angry spirit of the sea who lived in golden coral. To disturb it was to awaken its wrath. To respect it was to earn the ocean's favour. Divers today still treat it with reverence, knowing that the smallest brush of a fin, a fingertip, a piece of cloth, can bring the sudden spark of pain. The ocean, through this coral, reminds us of boundaries, that wonder and respect must coexist. Despite its defences, fire coral is as vulnerable as any reef dweller. It thrives only in clear, unpolluted water, where sunlight penetrates freely. A single storm can tear its fragile plates apart. When the sea warms beyond its comfort, the algae abandon it, leaving the skeleton pale and ghostly. The burn disappears, and so does the life within. What was once a sheet of molten colour becomes a relic, silent, chalk white, disarmed. Yet even in death, fire coral serves. Its honeycombed skeleton becomes a refuge for new creatures, sponges, barnacles, tiny fish. Over time, the reef reclaims it, layering new growth atop the old. The burn becomes memory again, woven into the ocean's endless act of renewal. Its scientific name, Millipora, means 1,000 pores. Indeed, its surface is pitted with tiny holes, each one a window to a living chamber. Through those pores, seawater circulates, feeding the polyps, carrying away waste, maintaining a delicate balance between stillness and flow. If the coral could speak, perhaps each pore would whisper a story, of the sun above, of the predators below, of the fragile beauty of survival through adaptation. Unlike most true corals, fire coral grows remarkably fast. In just a year, it can extend several centimetres, enough to outcompete neighbours and claim new territory. When fragments break off, they drift and settle elsewhere, forming new colonies. What fire destroys, fire also spreads. This resilience makes fire coral one of the first pioneers on damaged reefs, reclaiming bare stone and transforming it again into living architecture. The burn of fire coral is not simply chemical, it is poetic. It represents the ocean's capacity for contradiction, beauty that defends itself, stillness that stings. In the silent world beneath the waves, where most life survives by gentleness, fire coral insists on power, a reminder that even the most graceful things have edges. To the touch, it feels like smooth wax or fine stone. But the instant your skin lingers, the nematocysts awaken. Thousands of invisible arrows pierce in unison, each smaller than a grain of dust. The pain arrives a heartbeat later, sharp, hot, spreading. Divers often describe it as the ocean's lightning, short, searing, unforgettable. Yet as they retreat, they can't help but look back at the coral's glow, humbled by its fierce beauty. When the tide lowers and sunlight cuts sharper angles through the shallows, fire coral catches the rays and refracts them like gold dust. Schools of silver fish flicker between its branches, shadows stretch across its gleaming surface. The water itself seems to shimmer with heat, though it is cool to the skin. If you linger long enough, you may feel the illusion that the reef is breathing fire, not consuming, but illuminating. Scientists studying fire coral often marvel at its efficiency. Despite being only distantly related to true corals, it contributes heavily to reef building, especially in young reefs. Its dense skeleton provides early structure for later settlers, giving shape and shelter to the ecosystem. In this sense, its burn is a side effect of generosity, a defense mechanism for an essential architect. And perhaps that's why the ocean allows it to burn, because even fire, underwater, has its place in creation. At night, when the waves quiet and moonlight filters down like powdered silver, fire coral glows softly in the dark. The polyps open, releasing a faint halo of luminescence. Each one feeds on drifting plankton, its tentacles moving like flames in slow motion. From afar, the colony looks like an underwater campfire, flickering silently on the ocean floor. There is a strange comfort in watching it. You realize that in this world, danger and beauty are not opposites, they are intertwined. The coral burns to survive, but it also builds, heals, and shelters. Like the human heart, it defends itself while creating life around it. If you ever find yourself swimming above a field of fire coral, pause. Let the sunlight scatter over its surface. Watch how the golden flames sway with the tide. Don't touch. Just drift and listen. Beneath the crackle of water, beneath the hum of distant waves, the sea whispers one of its oldest truths. Some lights are meant to be felt, not held. 1,000 branches sway in the current, thin and trembling, like deer antlers caught in wind. Beneath them, tiny hearts sleep, and the ocean breathes through a golden forest. In the soft, shallow waters of the Caribbean, there are places where sunlight and coral intertwine until they become one colour, amber melting into turquoise. There you will find the staghorn coral, forests of delicate antlers, growing so quickly they almost seem alive to the touch. The name Acropora cervicornis means horns of the stag, and it fits perfectly. Each colony rises like a herd frozen mid-motion, its branches stretching toward the surface as though chasing the light. The staghorn coral is a builder of neighbourhoods. Each branch, as slender as a finger, splits into two, and those into two more, weaving an intricate lattice that shelters entire schools of fish. If you were to dive among them, you'd feel as if you were swimming through a submerged woodland, the kind of place where silence itself has texture. The coral hums faintly as water passes through it, the sound so low it vibrates more than it rings. Unlike the massive, slow-growing brain corals, staghorn coral is fast. It can grow more than 20 centimetres a year, one of the fastest rates in the coral world. This speed allows it to cover new ground quickly, to rebuild after storms, to reclaim space after damage. It's the grass of the reef, but sculpted into antlers, a paradox of fragility and persistence. Each branch is covered in countless small polyps, transparent creatures no wider than a raindrop. By day, they appear as tiny pores, By night, they awaken, spreading their tentacles to feed. Their partnership with photosynthetic algae allows them to thrive in bright, shallow waters where sunlight fuels both their food and their colour. Under daylight, the coral glows gold, turquoise, or even lilac. Under moonlight, it fades to silver like frost on crystal. This species has another gift. When broken, it regenerates. Storms may snap entire branches apart, but each fragment, if it lands in a suitable place, can anchor and grow into a new colony. This natural cloning makes the species remarkably resilient. In a sense, the staghorn never truly dies. It simply multiplies through fracture, turning destruction into a kind of rebirth. Scientists and conservationists have learned to use this talent to heal reefs. Divers now cultivate fragments of staghorn coral in underwater nurseries, lines of coral hanging gently from ropes, swaying in the current like underwater vineyards. When the fragments mature, they are planted back onto the reef, where they fuse with old skeletons and begin to branch again. Each piece becomes both memory and continuation, proof that the ocean remembers how to repair itself if given the chance. From above, a mature staghorn colony resembles a tangled web of life. Damselfish dart between branches, gobies hide among the shadows, sea urchins crawl across its rough surface. It is an entire city compressed into silence. Every movement of water through the coral carries oxygen, nutrients, and light, turning stillness into survival. But this coral's beauty carries a shadow. Because it grows so quickly, it is also vulnerable. Temperature changes, pollution and sedimentation can suffocate it. A single warm summer can bleach an entire field white, stripping away the symbiotic algae that sustain its energy. Diseases too move quickly through its dense colonies, especially the devastating white band disease, which eats away tissue from the base upward, leaving only bare skeletons behind. Once, staghorn coral dominated the Caribbean, forming vast underwater forests that stretched for miles. But since the 1980s, over 90% have disappeared. Their loss reshaped the reef, fish populations declined, currents shifted, and coastlines began to erode. The forest fell silent. Where once there were golden antlers, now only scattered bones remain. Still, there are glimmers of hope. In protected waters near the Bahamas, Belize, and the Virgin Islands, replanting efforts have brought new growth. Young staghorns rise again, glowing pale blue beneath the sun, waving gently in the current. Each branch is a fragile victory, each shadow a sign of return. The ocean, slow as it may seem, is still capable of forgiveness. If you swim close enough, you'll see that each branch's tip is alive with white translucent tissue, the coral's growing edge. It is here that the colony expands, adding millimetre by millimetre of new skeleton. This zone of life is also its most vulnerable, the place of both creation and risk. A fish brushing too hard, a grain of sand lodged in the wrong spot can injure it. Yet it continues, patient, tireless, almost tender. The staghorn's role in the reef is both practical and poetic. It is the architect of space, the designer of shelter. Its open lattice allows light to pass, creating a dappled underwater canopy that mirrors a forest floor. Juvenile fish take refuge there, learning the rhythm of the tide before venturing out into open water. Without these coral thickets, many species would never survive their youth. Marine biologists often refer to staghorn coral as a canary of the reef, an early warning system for ecological distress. When it weakens, the rest of the reef soon follows. When it thrives, the ecosystem hums with energy. Its presence is a sign that the ocean is still breathing in balance. Culturally, too, the staghorn carries symbolism. In Caribbean folklore, it is seen as a crown of the sea, its branches representing connection, regeneration, and memory. Some islanders once believed that wearing small pieces of broken coral could protect sailors from drowning, as if the coral's branching form could reach upward and pull them back toward the surface. If you dive near a living thicket of staghorn coral at dawn, the experience feels almost sacred. The light filters through the water in ribbons, catching on each branch and scattering into a golden haze. Tiny air bubbles rise and cling to the coral's surface like dew on leaves. Small fish drift lazily between the arms, their scales reflecting the morning's first light. The water is warm, almost still, and every breath through your regulator feels like the ocean's own heartbeat echoing in your chest. In moments like that, you understand why the sea is often called a mirror of the soul. The staghorn coral reflects both the strength and fragility of existence, its ability to shatter and yet to grow again, its quiet acceptance of impermanence. Each branch may be thin, but together they create an empire of endurance. At night, the forest comes alive in another way. The polyps awaken, glowing faintly as they feed. Under bioluminescent light, the entire reef seems to shimmer, a constellation beneath the surface. Each coral branch becomes a vein of light, pulsing softly with life. In that glow, time slows, and you can almost feel the coral's slow-motion heartbeat. The staghorn coral teaches us something essential, that resilience is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it is the quiet act of regrowth, the patience to rebuild from fragments, the ability to endure the tide's endless undoing. So, as the waves move above this golden forest, let yourself drift closer. Let the antlers brush your thoughts, hear the hum of water through 1,000 branches, and know that, even now, the ocean is writing stories of survival, one coral, one heartbeat, one fragile branch at a time. If you listen closely, you might hear the reef's whisper, even broken things can grow again. In the still light beneath the waves, there lies a skeleton the colour of twilight. It does not burn, it does not bleed, it simply remembers the blue. Deep within the tropical waters of the Indo-Pacific, near Indonesia, the Philippines and Papua New Guinea, there grows a coral unlike any other. Its surface glows in quiet shades of grey and tan, blending with the sand and shadow around it. But hidden beneath that modest exterior lies something extraordinary, a skeleton of deep metallic blue. Blue coral, Heliopora coerulea, is a paradox, a living being wrapped in the colour of calm, built from the same mineral that anchors mountains, yet alive enough to sway with the tide. For most corals, death turns the skeleton white. For this one, death deepens the hue. Even after centuries, its bones remain blue, an enduring echo of life. A pigment that refuses to fade. That blue is no illusion. It comes from iron salts interwoven with calcium carbonate, a chemical marriage between stone and sky. When divers find fragments of blue coral washed ashore, they look like shards of a lost planet, shimmering with hints of indigo and steel. To call it ancient would be an understatement. Fossils show that blue coral has changed little since the Jurassic period. More than 150 million years ago, it is in every sense a living fossil, a survivor of mass extinctions, ice ages and shifting continents. It has seen oceans rise and fall, temperatures swing, stars collapse and be reborn. Through it all, it has endured, holding its quiet flame of blue. Unlike most corals, blue coral's skeleton is not composed of discrete cups for individual polyps. Instead, it forms continuous walls filled with countless tiny pores, each one a breathing chamber for a colony of interconnected lives. The polyps themselves are small and translucent, their bodies illuminated by the light of the microscopic algae that live inside them. Together they form a single organism, pulsing gently as water flows through. If you could hover above a blue coral field, you would see a gentle undulation, mounds and ridges shaped by centuries of growth. Their tops are smooth, like the backs of sleeping whales, and their colours shift with the light. Beige in daylight, violet at dusk, glowing faintly under moonlight. And beneath that calm skin lies the unchanging heart of blue. In Japanese tradition, old fragments of blue coral were once treasured as charms of endurance, stones said to hold the soul of the sea. In Micronesia, they were carved into small ornaments and offered to ensure safe voyages. The ancient belief was that this coral carried the voice of calm waters within it. If you held a piece close to your ear, you could hear the sea breathing. There is a serenity to this coral that feels almost human. It does not compete for light or space. It grows slowly, deliberately, often at just a few millimeters a year. Yet it can live for thousands of years, outlasting empires and civilizations. Its patience is its strength. In a world that moves too quickly, blue coral reminds the ocean to slow down. When touched by currents, its surface ripples with a silvery sheen. Tiny fish graze along its ridges, and feather stars perch atop its crests, spreading arms to catch drifting food. Sea cucumbers and small crabs wander its slopes, unaware that they're walking across a living relic from the dawn of reefs. Everything that rests upon blue coral becomes gentler, as if the blue beneath them were calming the sea itself. Scientists studying blue coral often describe it as an anchor of stability. Its skeletal density makes it one of the strongest structures in the marine world. During storms, when other corals snap or crumble, blue coral remains. Its colonies form natural seawalls, absorbing wave energy, protecting coastlines, and giving shelter to more fragile species. In some areas, entire lagoons exist only because blue coral built their foundation thousands of years ago. Its very name, Heliopora, means stone of the sun. It is a poetic irony. Though its skeleton is the colour of night, it lives by the grace of sunlight. The algae inside it perform photosynthesis, capturing light and turning it into food. But unlike many bright branching corals that crave direct exposure, blue coral prefers filtered light. The soft radiance of morning, the muted glow of dusk. It grows best in places where the sun meets shadow. Perhaps that's why its colour feels so balanced, so timeless, born of both day and night. When divers approach a blue coral garden at depth, the water grows cooler and quieter. The colours of the reef begin to fade into monochrome blues, and then suddenly there they are. Fields of faintly glowing mounds, serene and unhurried. The coral reflects light in a way that seems to come from within, not from above. Its presence calms even the sea. Touch it, gently with gloved fingers, and it feels like polished stone, solid, ancient, unyielding. Yet within that hardness, life flows continuously. Each pore carries seawater through its network, keeping the coral alive, breathing, sensing. When the tide changes, the entire colony adjusts, flexing microscopically as if stretching after a long sleep. If the ocean were to write a poem about endurance, blue coral would be the first line. It embodies the patience of the deep, the acceptance that time is not an enemy, but a rhythm. While fast-growing species like staghorn and elkhorn reach high toward the sun, blue coral stays low and grounded, sculpting permanence rather than spectacle. Its legacy is measured not in meters of height, but in centuries of stability. For marine scientists, its skeleton is more than a marvel. It's a time capsule. Traces of isotopes within its blue calcium record fluctuations in temperature and chemistry, providing clues to the ocean's ancient moods. Every layer it grows is a page in a geologic diary. Long after storms have passed and reefs have changed, blue coral remembers. Under artificial light, its blue skeleton glows even after death. Some fragments are used in jewellery, deep azure beads polished smooth by human hands. Yet even polished and removed from the sea, the coral retains a faint luminescence, as if it still remembers moonlight. To hold one is to feel the weight of time condensed into beauty. But perhaps its greatest lesson lies not in its colour nor its age, but in its silence. It does not dazzle like fire coral, nor build vast forests like staghorn. It simply is, steady, quiet, unwavering. It proves that there is strength in stillness and elegance in endurance. In a world that warms too quickly, blue coral endures less easily now. Rising temperatures and acidifying seas weaken its skeleton, dissolve its minerals. Yet even here, the coral resists. In the reefs of Palau and Raja Ampat, divers still find vast blue fields, alive and vibrant, as if defying the fever of the planet. When sunlight hits those waters just right, the sea turns cobalt, and the corals seem to shine from within, a glimpse of eternity preserved in motion. If you close your eyes and imagine it, you might see them swaying gently, their surfaces breathing in a rhythm with the current. You might feel the cool weight of the water pressing lightly against your skin, hear the faint pulse of your heart sinking with the oceans. The coral whispers softly through time, "Do not fear what is slow. Even stone can glow if it remembers the light." And there, beneath the sea's endless hum, you drift. The colour blue deepens around you, quiet, infinite, alive. In the world below the light, there are trees that grow from darkness. Their branches are black glass, their leaves are ghosts, and through them, the ocean's slow blood flows. If you dive far enough, past the dancing reefs, past the sunlit sands, Into the silence where colour fades and sound thickens, you will find forests of shadow. Here, light no longer rules. The world turns to cobalt, then ink, then nothing at all. And in that stillness there grows a coral so dark and delicate, it seems carved from night itself. This is black coral, Antipathes dichotoma, a creature of paradox, a living thing that wears death's colour, a soft being with a skeleton as hard as obsidian. Most corals depend on sunlight. They live in the shallows where algae can weave light into food. But black coral lives in darkness, sometimes 30, sometimes 3,000 metres deep, where the only glow is the slow shimmer of bioluminescent plankton. Down here, survival takes another shape. Black coral feeds by touch, not by light. Its polyps stretch their pale arms into the black, capturing whatever the current brings. Plankton, detritus, fragments of life drifting from above. It eats what falls from the living world. Seen through a diver's lamp, a colony of black coral is breathtaking. Its branches twist and fan out like the arms of a tree, or perhaps like the frozen roots of lightning. The skeleton, though black, gleams faintly bronze when the light moves across it. From a distance, it looks fragile, as if a single wave could break it. Yet in truth it bends rather than shatters. Its core is made of a material unlike any other coral, protein and chitin, the same substance found in insect shells, making it both strong and flexible. When currents rush past, the entire colony sways gracefully, each limb curving in rhythm, like smoke underwater. In shallower waters, young black corals sometimes appear brown or golden. Only as they age and sink deeper does the skeleton darken, iron and manganese staining it over centuries into a perfect jet black sheen. The branches can reach more than 2 meters high, forming slow-motion thickets on the ocean floor. In those forests, strange creatures live, brittle stars clinging to the stems, small crabs hiding in the shadows, long worms spiraling around the branches like ribbons. It is a kingdom without sunlight, but not without grace. The coral surface is studded with thousands of tiny polyps, white or orange, soft as silk. Each one opens and closes with the pulse of the current, breathing in rhythm with the sea. The contrast between the ivory polyps and the black skeleton makes the colony look like lace, or frost blooming on dark glass. When a flashlight moves across it, it flashes gold, silver, and copper in succession, like veins of metal hidden in the dark. For centuries, humans believed these corals were made of stone. Fishermen pulling them from deep waters would polish their branches into jewellery. In Hawaii, they were sacred, called a kahaku moana, the coral that stands in the sea. Only master artisans could carve it, shaping the black skeleton into necklaces or ceremonial ornaments. To wear one was to carry the deep ocean's heartbeat against your skin. The finest specimens taken from depths over 1,000 meters were said to hold the wisdom of the sea, the veins of the earth, as the Polynesians called them, but that reverence turned to exploitation. During the 20th century, demand for black coral jewellery surged, and divers harvested it recklessly. Some colonies, thousands of years old, were cut down in minutes. What the ocean had grown for millennia, humans could erase in an hour. The trade left ghost forests on the seafloor, stumps where living lace once waved. In response, conservation laws emerged, protecting many species under the CITES agreement. Yet the scars remain, invisible to all but those who dive deep enough to see them. The oldest known black coral colony, found off the coast of Hawaii, is estimated to be more than 4,000 years old. It began growing before the pyramids of Giza were built, before the first word of recorded history was written. Each ring in its skeleton marks a year of the sea's pulse, currents, temperatures, the chemistry of storms. To touch it is to brush against time itself. In the still waters where it lives, everything moves slowly. The coral's polyps open like white petals and then withdraw, as if sighing. Fish pass rarely here. The silence is nearly perfect. If you stay long enough, you begin to feel as though you've entered a cathedral built not for sound, but for absence. The black coral stands as the architecture of that silence, pillars of night rising from the seabed, turning emptiness into form. Its scientific name, Antipathes, means against suffering. Early naturalists believed its black colour and medicinal appearance could ward off evil. In ancient maritime superstition, sailors carried fragments of it as charms to protect against drowning. Even now, in some coastal villages, small polished pieces are kept as talismans for safe voyages, dark stones said to remember the path home. If you shine a narrow beam of light along a branch, you can see its texture. Not smooth, but ridged, spiralling like wood grain. Those ridges are growth lines, records of centuries. In cross-section, the coral reveals concentric circles, each one marking a year, a memory, a heartbeat. The deeper you look, the finer they become, until the pattern fades into infinity. Unlike the colourful corals of shallow reefs, black coral's beauty lies in restraint. It does not shout, it whispers, it speaks through contrast, light on darkness, movement in stillness. Even its survival strategy reflects patience. In cold, nutrient-poor water, it grows just a centimetre per year. A human lifetime passes before it reaches the height of your arm, yet given time, it builds forests more ancient than civilizations. To scientists, black coral is a living archive. Its skeleton absorbs traces of metals and isotopes from the water, preserving chemical signatures of the deep sea's changing history. Through it, researchers can read shifts in ocean currents and temperatures from centuries past. It is quite literally the memory of darkness, written not in ink but in protein and salt. At night, even here where night never ends, bioluminescent plankton drift between its branches like wandering stars. The coral does not glow itself, but the creatures around it light its edges, turning the forest into a galaxy suspended in water. The sight defies words. A sky turned upside down, constellations shining through liquid blackness, and within that darkness the coral breathes. Its polyps open, its branches sway, and the sea hums faintly around it. If you listen with your heart rather than your ears, you might sense what it says, not in words, but in rhythm. A slow, steady pulse, older than humanity, deeper than silence itself. Black coral teaches us that beauty need not be bright, that life can flourish without light. That endurance is not the same as stillness, but something gentler. A quiet persistence, a pulse that refuses to stop even when the world above has forgotten. So imagine yourself drifting there, where no colour remains but shadow. The water is cold, your breath steady. Around you, black branches rise and fall like lungs, glowing faintly in borrowed starlight. You feel small, weightless, peaceful. The ocean has taken away every noise, every urgency, and in that moment you realise even darkness has veins, and in those veins life moves, slow, secret, endless. There is a pulse beneath the waves, a slow heartbeat the colour of fire. It does not fade, it does not rest. It is the ocean remembering its own blood. If the sea had a heartbeat, it would be red. Not the red of violence or heat, but the red of memory, slow, rhythmic, eternal. In the quiet depths of the Mediterranean, between 50 and 200 metres down, clusters of crimson branches grow in darkness. They sway gently, like candles that burn without flame. This is red coral, Corallium rubrum, the ancient jewel of the sea, the blood that never dries. Unlike the fragile glass-like corals of shallow reefs, red coral lives in the half-light, where sunlight softens into shadow. It builds colonies on vertical cliffs, under rock ledges, in the silent caverns of the deep. There the water is cold, the current slow, and the world muted to a soft blue haze. In that suspended twilight, the coral's red gleam seems almost supernatural, a pulse of colour in an otherwise monochrome realm. Its skeleton, rich with iron and carotenoid pigments, remains vivid even after death. While most corals turn white when their polyps die, Corallium rubrum retains its crimson hue for centuries. The name rubrum means red like blood, and ancient people took it literally. They believed the coral's colour was life itself, solidified vitality, a bridge between the living and the dead. Each colony begins as a single polyp. Over decades it branches slowly, 1 millimetre a year, no more. That means a coral wrist thick might already be a century old. It grows like a clock hand that only moves once a year, keeping time with the rhythm of the sea. The polyps are white and delicate, forming soft crowns on the red skeleton. When they feed, they look like snow falling on ruby. From afar, a red coral forest resembles a cluster of burning bushes caught in stillness. Their hues shift subtly, some deep scarlet, others orange, vermilion, or even pink. When a diver's light passes over them, they glow from within, translucent as living glass. Around them drift small shrimp, soft-bodied snails, and fish no bigger than your thumb, all living among the branches like birds in a crimson forest. For thousands of years, humans have sought this coral, not as scientists but as dreamers. Ancient Greeks believed red coral formed from the blood of Medusa, spilled into the sea when Perseus cut off her head. The Roman poet Ovid wrote that her blood hardened into red branches that shone in the waves. The legend spread across the Mediterranean, and soon the coral was worn as protection against curses, storms, and evil eyes. In ancient Rome, mothers tied red coral beads around their children's necks to guard them from harm. Sailors carried coral amulets as they crossed unknown seas. During the Renaissance, it became a symbol of Christ's sacrifice, the ocean's own crown of thorns. To wear it was to carry both the memory of the sea and the promise of salvation. But the reverence that made red coral sacred also made it hunted. From the Middle Ages to the 20th century, divers and merchants scoured the Mediterranean and North African coasts for coral branches. Cities like Torre del Greco in Italy built entire economies around carving coral into jewellery, cameos and religious artefacts. Each branch, once alive, became a piece of human adornment, polished until it shone like glass. Even now, the world's oldest known coral workshops still stand in Naples and Marseille, where artisans cut and shape red coral using techniques passed down for centuries. When sunlight hits the finished beads, they glow with a warmth no gemstone can imitate, a warmth born of life itself. But beneath the beauty lies a tragedy. The same slow growth that makes red coral precious also makes it vulnerable. A coral that takes 100 years to mature can be destroyed in seconds by a careless anchor or dredge. In many regions, entire forests have vanished, leaving empty walls where crimson once bloomed. Overharvesting reduced wild populations by more than 90%, and climate change threatens what remains. The sea's veins are bleeding faster than they can heal. To protect it, conservation laws now guard Corallium rubrum under CITES regulations. Divers collect only fragments that have naturally detached or harvest from carefully managed farms. In underwater sanctuaries around Sardinia, Corsica, and the coast of Spain, small colonies are beginning to return. They grow slowly, quietly, millimetre by millimetre, like the sea breathing itself back to life. Red coral does not need sunlight. It feeds on the drifting particles of the deep, minute plankton carried by the current. Each polyp opens its small white arms into the dark and waits. There is no hurry. The coral knows that the ocean brings what is meant to come. It has learned through millennia that patience is a form of strength. When you hold a piece of red coral in your hand, it feels heavier than expected. Its surface is cool, but if you hold it long enough, it warms as if it remembers the temperature of blood. Light passes through it softly, like wine through stained glass. If you listen closely, you might even imagine you can hear the sea inside it. A faint rhythmic hum, the echo of waves breaking in memory. Scientists studying red coral describe it as a slow-motion witness to the Mediterranean's past. The composition of its skeleton reveals changes in the ocean's chemistry over hundreds of years. Through it, we can trace the rise of pollution, the warming of currents, even the chemical fingerprints of volcanic eruptions. In silence, it records everything. Yet despite its fragility, red coral persists. In the caves of Sardinia, divers have found ancient colonies still growing in places untouched by light. The red shines just as vividly as it did 1,000 years ago, proof that the sea's blood does not pale with age. To look upon it underwater is to feel both awe and sorrow. Its colour is so alive that it almost feels human, a reminder that vitality and mortality are bound together. Every branch is a gesture frozen in motion, a living flame turned to stone. When the tide slows and the water stills, the coral forest sways with a rhythm like breathing. The fish around it seem to slow too, lulled by its pulse. You might imagine that the ocean itself has a heart somewhere beneath you, beating softly in red, and perhaps that is the truth. The red coral story is not only about the sea, it is about the pulse within all fragile things, the will to continue despite erosion, hunger, or time. If you close your eyes, you can almost see it, a forest of red bones in the blue darkness, each branch swaying with the weight of centuries. It does not burn, it does not bleed, it simply lives, and through it, the ocean remembers how to love. When the reef falls silent, the wind begins to hum. It passes through 1,000 hollow tubes, and the sea remembers how to sing. Beneath the bright shallows of the Indian and Pacific Oceans, there is a coral that builds not in branches or walls, but in instruments. From the seafloor it rises in rows of crimson pipes, slender tubes that hum softly when water flows through them. It is called organ pipe coral, Tubipora musica, named for the way it looks and the way it sounds. When the colony dries, when the tide leaves it bare, even the wind can make it whisper, a faint, flute-like note from the memory of the sea. This coral is unlike any other. Most reefs are pale or stony, but Tubipora musica glows with the colour of oxidized blood. Its skeleton is made of bright red calcium carbonate tubes, each about the thickness of a straw, arranged side by side like the pipes of a cathedral organ. From the top, the colony is covered by a soft layer of living polyps, tiny white flowers that open and close with the tide. When they bloom, the coral looks like a snowfield floating above a scarlet city. In calm water, these polyps wave slowly, catching plankton and filtering sunlight through their translucent arms. They feed the colony by day and glow faintly at night, responding to the blue shimmer of moonlight. Under ultraviolet light, their edges shine green and violet, a quiet aurora under the sea. Divers often say that organ-pipe coral feels alive in a musical way. The slightest current makes its tubes vibrate, creating soft resonances that echo through nearby reefs. The sound is too low for human ears, but sensitive hydrophones record it as a gentle hum, an underwater chord woven into the ocean's constant breath. It is no wonder that early naturalists named it musica, believing that the sea itself played through it. If you were to break a piece of dead organ pipe coral, you would see the inside, hollow tubes lined in deep red. These channels once carried the colony's lifeblood, water and nutrients drawn in by the polyps, circulated by the rhythm of the tide. Each tube connects to its neighbours by tiny horizontal bridges, forming a lattice both strong and elegant. Together, they create a network that can cover meters of seabed, like the foundation of a submerged temple. The coral's red hue is not a surface illusion. It runs through the entire skeleton, a pigment derived from iron and organic compounds within its structure. Even after centuries, even fossilized, the red remains vivid, a colour that refuses to fade. Because of this, Tubipora musica has long been harvested for jewellery and ornaments. In some regions, the dried skeleton was ground into powder for rituals, believed to carry the song of the sea that could soothe sickness or grief. Yet behind its beauty lies fragility. Organ pipe coral grows slowly, only a few millimetres per year. It thrives in warm, shallow, clear waters, places that are now under siege from bleaching, pollution and rising temperatures. When light becomes too harsh or sediment covers its tubes, it suffocates. The delicate polyps withdraw and the coral turns ghostly white. Without its living layer, the skeleton soon erodes. The music stops. Still, it is a survivor. In protected lagoons around Indonesia, the Maldives, and Papua New Guinea, colonies of Tubipora musica still carpet the seabed in soft crimson fields. When the current moves gently across them, their white polyps sway like notes on invisible sheet music, the rhythm dictated by the tide. Tiny fish hide between the tubes, darting out like sparks. Crabs nestle in the spaces between the pipes. Even octopuses sometimes rest there, changing colour to match the coral's deep red. Scientists who study reef acoustics, an emerging field called bioacoustics, have found that reefs rich in organ pipe coral produce distinct soundscapes. They hum at lower frequencies than other coral environments due to the resonance of the tubes and the behaviour of the animals around them. For baby fish searching for a home, these sounds act as beacons. Guided by the hum, they swim toward the reef. Drawn not by sight but by song, it is, in its own way, a symphony of survival. In ancient Polynesian mythology, it was said that when the sea god Kanaloa breathed across the ocean floor, the organ pipe coral sang to mark the creation of the tides. Its music, they believed, could calm storms and summon clear water. In some islands, fishermen would lower coral fragments into the sea before setting out, believing the coral song would lead fish toward them. Even today, in certain atolls, locals call it the singing coral. The structure of Tubipora musica also plays a vital ecological role. Its tubes provide microhabitats for countless small creatures, brittle stars, worms, tiny crabs. The coral's lattice acts like a filter, slowing currents and trapping fine sediments, which in turn allow seagrasses and sponges to colonize the area. It is both a builder and a bridge, a silent engineer that transforms bare sand into a cradle of life. Under a microscope, the polyp's soft bodies seem to float above the rigid skeleton, like lace stretched across a harp. Their translucent tissues contain symbiotic algae that photosynthesize, feeding the coral in daylight. At night, the polyps extend, capturing plankton carried by the tide. Their rhythm never stops. Their motion, like breathing, is endless. The reef sleeps, but the coral keeps time. When a reef dies, the skeletons of organ-pipe coral sometimes remain intact. As the sea withdraws during low tide, wind moves through the exposed tubes, producing faint flute-like sounds. To hear it is eerie and beautiful, a natural organ built by living stone. The ancients thought it was the sea mourning its lost children. Scientists now know it as the sound of air passing through hollow calcareous tubes. But perhaps both are true. If you swim through a living field of organ-pipe coral, the scene feels like drifting through a dream. The water shimmers red and white. Schools of small fish move in slow choreography. Sunlight filters down in trembling ribbons. Every shadow glows with warmth. You might find yourself holding your breath, afraid that even the sound of air bubbles could break the stillness. In the hush of that underwater world, you can sense the coral's music not with your ears, but with your body. The vibrations of the reef, the movement of water through thousands of narrow tubes, resonate through your bones. It feels like a heartbeat made of light. The organ pipe. Coral reminds us that beauty is not always silent, and that life's most delicate forms often create the strongest harmonies. It sings not by will, but by design, its very shape turning the movement of water into melody. And when it dies, it continues to echo. Even in bone, even in ruin, it remembers how to sing. Close your eyes and imagine the sound. The hum of a current through crimson pipes, the soft percussion of sand against stone, the high, crystalline whisper of a fish darting past. Together they form a lullaby, a hymn written not in words but in waves, a music older than language, played forever on the organ of the sea. Beneath the hush of moving water, 1,000 glassy lungs rise and fall. They do not speak, they only breathe, the ocean exhaling through pearls of light. If the ocean could dream, it would dream in the shape of bubbles, soft, round, translucent, each holding a piece of light, a whisper of air, a memory of the sky. That dream takes form in one of the reef's strangest and most tender beings, bubble coral Plerogyra sinuosa, a living cluster of breathing pearls. In the calm, dim waters of the Indo-Pacific, at depths between 10 and 30 meters, these corals rest like cushions upon the seafloor. From afar they resemble piles of soft glass beads, pale blue or ivory under filtered sunlight. Yet when you draw near, you see that each bubble is alive, filled not with air but with living tissue, stretching and contracting in rhythm with the tide. Each orb is a polyp's outer wall, inflated with seawater during the day to gather sunlight. The coral's symbiotic algae, tiny zooxanthellae, live within these balloons, feeding on the light and sharing the energy they create. The result is a body that glows from within, a breathing lantern whose pulse matches the ocean's own. At night, the transformation begins. The bubbles deflate, shrinking like fading stars. From their hollow sockets emerge long, transparent tentacles, each tipped with tiny, stinging cells. They reach into the dark, swaying gently, catching drifting plankton. The coral that looked like a sleeping cloud by day becomes a forest of hunters by night. It is this duality, serenity and ferocity, that makes bubble coral so captivating. It is both flower and predator, pillow and trap. The sea through it shows its talent for contradiction, how softness can hide strength, how gentleness can kill. The colour palette of Plerogyra sinuosa is subtle yet enchanting. Under daylight its bubbles shimmer white, mint or lilac. In deeper waters they turn blue-grey, their translucence broken by faint reflections of gold. When moonlight filters through the surface, the coral seems to glow on its own, each bubble a pearl catching lunar fire. Divers who see it at that hour often describe it as a field of souls rising from the sand. Despite its fragile appearance, bubble coral is hardy when conditions suit it. It prefers quiet lagoons, protected slopes and caves where currents move gently. Strong waves can tear its tissue and too much light can bleach it. Yet in the right balance, dim light, soft current, clean water, it thrives, expanding its colony slowly, bubble by bubble, until it forms clusters the size of a human torso. Touch it, and it feels unlike any other coral. Smooth, cool and slightly elastic, like a drop of water turned solid for a moment. But the coral is sensitive. A single careless touch can rupture a bubble, leaving a scar that may take months to heal. That fragility has made it a quiet symbol of care among marine biologists, the idea that to truly understand something beautiful you must not disturb it. Under the microscope, each bubble is a world. Its outer membrane is filled with living cells, pigments, and calcium threads that shimmer in microcurrents. The polyps inflate them by controlling osmotic pressure, drawing in water through their tissues, then sealing it inside. It's a breathing system evolved for light capture, increasing surface area without needing to grow upward. In the language of biology, it is an adaptation. In the language of poetry, it is a miracle. During the day, fish glide past these shimmering fields, using them as shade from the sun. Small crustaceans hide beneath their folds. Even tiny shrimp form symbiotic partnerships, cleaning debris from the coral in exchange for protection. If you hover above one of these colonies long enough, you might notice how the water slows around it, as if time itself were moving more gently there. But like all coral species, bubble coral carries the quiet wound of a warming world. Increased water temperature can force the algae inside to abandon their hosts, leaving the coral translucent and weak. In such moments, its bubbles lose colour and deflate permanently, a sight that feels like watching breath itself leave the body. In regions where bleaching events have swept through, divers find fields of collapsed bubble coral, their once living pearls turned to dust. Yet the sea remembers how to heal. In areas protected from pollution, colonies have shown surprising resilience. Given time and cooler water, the algae return. The coral reinflates, the pearls rise once more. Life, like air, returns to its lungs. The coral's scientific name, Plerogyra sinuosa, means full of curved spheres. It describes not just the coral's form, but its nature. Abundance through repetition, life built from patterns. Each bubble is small, but together they create a landscape that feels endless. In the soft sway of water, they move as one body, thousands of tiny chambers breathing the same rhythm. Under blue light they become luminous. Divers equipped with UV lamps often visit reefs at night to witness what's called fluorescent respiration, the moment when corals release a faint glow as their tissues metabolize oxygen. Among them, bubble coral shines brightest. Its bubbles radiate a tender greenish hue, like phosphorescent pearls. The scene feels otherworldly, a silent choir of light pulsing to the rhythm of the waves. In some coastal folklore, bubble coral was believed to hold the spirits of the drowned. Fishermen of the Malay archipelago called it the sea's breath, believing that the tiny bubbles were souls exhaled by the ocean itself. To disturb them was considered disrespectful. To pop them was to silence a dream. It is a myth, but one that captures a truth science confirms. Every coral breathes, every reef exhales oxygen, every tide is a lung. The coral's slow inflation and deflation follow not just the light, but the moon. When the tide changes, the colony adjusts, its bubbles expanding slightly during incoming tides, contracting as the sea retreats. It is as if the coral were listening to the lunar pulse above, syncing its own heartbeat with the rhythm of the planet. When you drift near one, the sensation is mesmerizing. You can see your reflection in its glossy surface, rippling with the movement of water. The coral seems to breathe beneath you, its orbs rising and falling like a sleeping creature. It feels alive in a way that challenges the boundaries of what we call life, a reminder that the sea does not draw the same lines we do. Marine photographers often say that bubble coral is among the most calming subjects underwater. Its rounded shapes absorb light softly, diffusing harsh contrasts, turning every scene into a painting of serenity. Around it, even fast-moving fish seem to slow down. The entire reef feels as though it is exhaling peace. If you close your eyes now, imagine yourself there. The water around you is cool, slow, blue-green. Light filters through from above in thin, trembling beams. Below, a cluster of pale bubbles sways gently in rhythm. You breathe in, the coral breathes out. You breathe out, it breathes in. There is no boundary, only exchange. And as the current hums softly, you realize that you are not separate from this rhythm. You're part of the same slow respiration that has moved through oceans for millions of years. You're a bubble. Two, rising, glowing, breathing light beneath the sea. When the tide moves, the sea opens its fans, vast violet veils that wave to the wind below the waves. They do not chase the current, they listen to it, and in their stillness, they dance. Far below the breaking waves, in the quiet shallows of the Caribbean, great fans rise from the seafloor like the sails of a forgotten fleet. They are not fabric and not bone, but living lace, woven from the hands of time and tide. This is sea fan coral, Gorgonia ventellina, one of the ocean's most graceful creations, a cathedral of silk beneath the sea. Seen from afar, a single sea fan looks like a flat net, sometimes taller than a person, sometimes wide as a door. Its colour shifts with the light, purple, lavender, rose, or a faded gold that catches sunlight like dust in a cathedral beam. Its branches are thin, flexible, and arranged in perfect symmetry, each line following the path of water as if written by the current itself. Unlike the stone-hard corals that build walls and mountains, the sea fan is a dancer. It bends, it sways, it yields. The strength of its body lies in its surrender. Its structure, made of a flexible protein called gorgonin, allows it to move like a silk banner under the sea. When waves roll overhead, the fan bends backward, never breaking. When the current shifts, it leans, adjusting its wide body to face the new direction. It lives not by resisting, but by listening. Every strand of its lattice holds hundreds of tiny polyps, each a living mouth, each a thread of life. They open together, closing together, feeding on plankton carried by the water. The entire colony acts as one body, thousands of lives breathing in unison, catching food from invisible rivers. To watch a sea fan feeding under moonlight is to see a field of ghosts glowing softly in purple. The polyps stretch outward like stars unfolding their light and then retreat again into shadow. The sea fan's scientific name, ventellina, comes from the Latin ventus, meaning wind. It is, quite literally, the coral that breathes with the wind of the ocean. The orientation of its body, always facing the prevailing current, turns the invisible motion of water into visible poetry. Its fan captures not air, but flow, the sea's own exhalation. The surface of a mature colony is like an underwater tapestry. Each vein, each crossing branch, follows a mathematical precision that echoes the geometry of leaves and lungs. Indeed, marine biologists sometimes call the sea fan the ocean's lungs, for it filters plankton, balances oxygen, and sustains countless other forms of life. Tiny crabs crawl through its veins. Seahorses anchor their tails to its branches, blending perfectly with the coral's colour. Nudibranchs feed along its edges, and small fish hover in its shadow like sparks in a soft violet storm. If you run your gloved fingers gently along a dead sea fan, you can feel the texture of its skeleton, a mesh both rough and delicate like dried vines. But when alive, it is covered in soft tissue, shimmering faintly with iridescence. Underwater photographers often use it as a frame for the sun, a window through which light filters in shifting, dappled tones. It turns every ray into a ripple of colour, every shadow into silk. Sea fans do not build reefs, they adorn them. They grow attached to rocks or coral rubble, spreading their nets outward instead of upward. In doing so, they capture more of the passing current, feeding on the microscopic nutrients carried by the tide. They prefer moderate flow, not too calm, not too violent. In still water, they suffocate. In stormy water, they tear. Like many delicate things, they thrive on balance. In Caribbean folklore, sea fans were once believed to be the hair of sea goddesses, combed by the wind of the deep. Fishermen would sometimes tie small fragments to their nets, believing it would help the nets breathe like the fan and fill with fish. Others called it the ocean's ear, saying that the coral could listen to the prayers of sailors lost at sea and whisper them back to the surface. But beyond mythology, their importance is quietly scientific. Sea fans act as filters in the marine ecosystem, removing particles, absorbing excess nutrients, and providing surface area for microorganisms to live. Their presence signals a healthy, oxygen-rich environment. When they die or bleach, it often marks a shift in ocean health, a silent alarm written in violet and gold. The sea fan's flexibility comes at a cost. It is easily damaged by anchors, trawling nets, and pollution. Microplastics and sediments clog its pores, blocking the tiny polyps from feeding. When water becomes too warm, the polyps release their symbiotic algae, and the once vibrant fan turns pale, brittle, and still. In some regions of the Bahamas and Cuba, entire fields of sea fans have turned grey, folded veils of silence swaying in poisoned water. Yet in other places they thrive. Off the coasts of Belize, Dominica, and Curacao, divers can still drift through corridors of sea fans stretching in all directions, a labyrinth of lavender. The light through them is unreal, like stained glass moving in water. When the tide flows strong, the fans sway together, all aligned in the same direction as if listening to the same song. If you stay long enough among them, you'll start to feel the rhythm they follow. It's slow, circular, unhurried, a pulse, not of sound, but of movement. The water passes through the fans, and in that passing something invisible becomes visible. You can see the current, see the breath of the sea itself. Under moonlight, sea fans glow faintly. Their soft fluorescence outlines their edges, making them look like galaxies caught in webs. The tiny creatures clinging to them, feather stars, shrimp, plankton, shine like dust in a cosmic breeze. And through it all the fans move, waving gently in the darkness, their edges curling as if gesturing to something ancient and kind. In this quiet choreography, there is no haste, no conflict, only surrender. Surrender to current, to change, to the flow that has always been. There is wisdom in their movement if you know how to look. They teach that strength need not resist, that beauty need not conquer. They teach that the truest balance is found in yielding. When storms come, the sea fans fold with the water, surviving where rigid things break. When calm returns, they rise again, shaking off sediment like dust from silk. Their resilience is not defiance. It is harmony. If you float close to a field of them, the feeling is unlike anything on land. You're surrounded by motion, yet everything feels still. The water presses lightly against your skin, warm and alive. You can see each fan breathing, flexing, shimmering. The sunlight filters through, and suddenly it looks as though you're floating in the lungs of the world. Breathe with them, in, out, in, out. The current brushes your face, your body sways. You become part of their rhythm, your heart sinking with the soft cadence of the sea. And in that silence, in that slow and endless motion, the ocean whispers one of its simplest, oldest lessons. To live is to move with the tide. To last is to learn how to bend. The sea fan does both, forever waving in the windless world beneath the waves, a violet prayer to the rhythm of the sea. When the sea grows dark, 1,000 suns rise from the stone. They do not chase the daylight, they make their own. As the last glow of sunlight disappears from the horizon, the reef falls into shadow. The water cools, the colours fade, the ocean holds its breath, and then, suddenly, silently, light blooms again. Not from the sky this time, but from the seafloor. Tiny orange and gold flowers unfurl, their translucent petals glowing against the dark. It is the sun coral, Tubostrea coccinea, the coral that wakes when the world sleeps. Unlike most of its kin, sun coral does not depend on sunlight. It thrives in the twilight, the caves, the undersides of ledges where other corals would starve. It has no symbiotic algae to harvest energy from light. Instead, it feeds entirely on what the current carries. Each of its bright polyps is a mouth, a hunter, a flame. When night comes, the colony opens and the water fills with slow golden fire. From a distance, a sun coral colony looks like a bouquet of marigolds glowing at the bottom of the sea. Its polyps stretch outward like small suns with soft radiating tentacles. The tissue is thin and shimmering, the colour of saffron and honey mixed with molten copper. The coral skeleton, hidden beneath, is pale and hard, a cradle for its living light. During the day, the polyps retract, vanishing into that white stone, leaving behind only the faint suggestion of colour. But when the world darkens, they bloom in unison. Divers often find them growing in unexpected places, on shipwrecks, on discarded anchors, on the concrete pillars of docks. Wherever there is shadow and a passing current, they take root. Their presence transforms forgotten ruins into underwater gardens. It's as if the sea itself were reclaiming what humanity abandoned, turning steel into reef, decay into radiance. Despite their beauty, sun corals are controversial guests. In many oceans, they are newcomers, travellers carried unknowingly by ships' hulls and ballast water. Having no natural predators in these regions, they spread fast, covering rocks and coral skeletons alike. In Brazil, Florida, and parts of the Indo-Pacific, they have become invasive, bright, relentless pioneers of the dark. To the human eye, they are breathtaking. To native corals, they are conquerors. The irony is sharp, a coral that blooms in darkness, stealing space from those who need the sun. Yet even as they compete, they remind us of the ocean's adaptability. Tubastrea coccinea has mastered survival beyond light. Each polyp can capture plankton with precision, using its 12 long tentacles armed with tiny stinging cells. The coral's tissue glows faintly under ultraviolet light, and some scientists believe the pigment helps it attract prey, acting as a bioluminescent lure. To small crustaceans drifting through the black, those orange flares must look like miniature dawns, until they drift too close. The coral's name, Tubastrea, means star tubes, and it's easy to see why. When a colony opens fully, it resembles a field of suns, or perhaps a constellation scattered across stone. The effect is hypnotic. The water glimmers, the reef breathes, and for a few hours each night the darkness of the sea turns golden. If you dive among them, you'll feel a strange inversion, light blooming from below, not above. The beams of your torch catch the coral's petals, and they seem to absorb the light rather than reflect it, glowing even more intensely. The surrounding rocks fade into shadow, and soon it feels as though you're floating through a field of embers, each one swaying gently with the tide. The colony's growth is slow but persistent. Its skeleton expands outward in a series of circular ridges, each new ring forming as the polyp deposits calcium around itself. When the polyp dies, its stone cup remains, a hollow reminder of the fire that once lived there. New polyps bud from the sides, expanding the colony outward, covering every available surface. Over decades, entire walls of rock can become golden mosaics, layered with the ghosts of generations past. For marine scientists, sun coral represents resilience. It proves that life can thrive even without light, that the absence of the sun does not mean the absence of warmth. In a future ocean where bleaching and warming have stripped away the bright reefs, species like this may endure, carrying the memory of colour into the dimmer world ahead. But in that endurance lies a question: at what cost? The same traits that make sun coral strong, its independence from algae, its rapid spread, also make it a threat to the delicate balance of natural reefs. It covers slow-growing species, blocks larvae from settling, and alters the rhythm of the ecosystem. The coral that brings light to darkness can also suffocate it. The ocean's beauty once again holds a blade, and yet there is something impossible not to love about them. The sight of a sun coral colony blooming in the dark is pure wonder. Each polyp opens with the slow grace of a heartbeat, the tentacles curling outward like rays of dawn. They move as if listening to a silent symphony, the rhythm of the tide, the breath of the deep. Their colour, amber, orange, flame, is warmth incarnate, the ocean's own memory of sunlight. In some coastal myths of the Pacific Islands, people believed that sun corals were the souls of the drowned, lighting their way home. When fishermen saw their glow through the black water, they whispered prayers, thanking the sea for guiding their lost ones. They are the lamps of the ocean, one old story says, the lights that do not die. If you hover near them at night, the water becomes thick with life. Small fish, drawn by the glow, weave between the polyps. Plankton swarm in golden clouds. shrimp flicker past like sparks. You feel the pull of it, the warmth, the pulse, the soft radiance that seems to hum with a voice just below hearing. It is the heartbeat of life continuing in darkness, and when dawn returns, the transformation reverses. The coral closes, the light fades, the reef returns to shadow. What remains is a blank wall of pale stone, unremarkable until night falls again. Its glory is hidden in rest, waiting for the next dark tide. In that rhythm lies the secret of the sun coral, a lesson written in colour and silence. It tells us that even in absence, beauty endures, that darkness does not extinguish light, it gives it shape. As you drift upward toward the surface, the sunlight returns, scattering over the waves like broken glass. Behind you, the suns of the sea fold themselves away, returning to stillness. Their glow remains in your mind, echoing in the quiet water. And for a moment you understand what the coral has known all along. Light is not a place, it is a promise. It blooms wherever the heart dares to open, even in the deepest dark. There are no stones here, only silk that sways. A forest without roots, a dream without noise. Every colour is breathing, every wave is a heartbeat. There are moments underwater when the world feels lighter than air. The current moves through you, and for a heartbeat, gravity disappears. You turn your head, and the reef seems to be floating, not made of rock or bone, but of petals and lace. This is the realm of soft coral, Dendronephthia hemprichi, the ocean's fabric, the living veil that softens the edge of stone. Unlike their hard, calcified cousins, soft corals do not build skeletons of limestone. Their bodies are flexible, formed of living tissue supported by tiny spicules, minute crystals that glint inside them like threads of glass. They bend with every movement of the tide, drifting like underwater meadows. When the sea flows over them, the coral forests bow together as though listening to an ancient song. A single colony of Dendronephthia can take 100 shapes. Some look like cherry blossoms frozen mid-bloom. Others rise like clouds of pink smoke. Their colours are endless. Soft mauve, golden cream, coral red, lilac, even deep violet that fades into blue. Each hue changes with the light, brighter in morning, muted by dusk, glowing faintly at night. If you swim through them, you feel as though you've entered a dream painted in watercolour. Their texture is delicate but alive. Each branch is made of living flesh, and each tiny bud is a polyp, a small star-shaped creature with 8 tentacles. The polyps feed constantly, opening and closing in rhythm with the water, capturing tiny plankton carried by the flow. They have no algae within them. They rely solely on the tide for nourishment. It is a constant act of trust to let the ocean feed you and never know when the next wave will bring food. Soft corals live in places other corals cannot. They flourish where light is dim or current strong, clinging to vertical cliffs, reef slopes and even shipwrecks. Their branches wave in the water, filtering particles from the sea like living nets. In their movement lies their magic, the illusion that the sea itself is breathing through them. To divers, they are among the most mesmerizing sights in the ocean. A field of Dendronephthia under gentle current is a ballet. Thousands of blossoms swaying in unison, each petal moving slower than a heartbeat. Small fish hover within their folds, anthias, damselfish, wrasses, flashing orange and yellow against the coral's pink glow. Even the water seems to change texture here, turning into liquid silk. Because they do not build hard skeletons, soft corals are often overlooked in the grand narrative of reefs. They do not construct mountains or islands. They do not leave fossils behind. When they die, they vanish completely, returning to the sea as drifting dust. And yet, in their brief lives, they transform the reef into something more than structure. They turn it into music. Their movement fills the spaces between the stones, connecting stillness and flow. In the Red Sea, where Dendronephthia hemprichi thrives in vivid abundance, local divers call them the clouds of the reef. Seen from afar, their colonies rise from the seafloor like floating islands, trembling with life. Schools of glassfish pass above them, scattering light like shards of silver. Below, soft corals absorb the rhythm of the waves, transforming turbulence into grace. Each branch of a soft coral is soft enough to bend but strong enough to hold. The secret lies in its internal framework, a network of flexible fibers that expand and contract with pressure. This allows it to survive in areas where waves would shatter hard corals. When the tide grows violent, the colony folds inward, reducing its surface area and protecting itself. When calm returns, it opens again, wider and brighter than before. There is a lesson there, a quiet philosophy written in motion. Yield, and you will not break. Flow, and you will endure. Soft corals also serve as nurseries for countless marine species. Tiny crustaceans lay eggs among their folds. Fish find shelter within their branches. Nudibranchs crawl across their surfaces, their colours mimicking the coral's own. Every inch of the colony is alive with partnership. In places where hard corals have bleached and died, soft corals often return first, reweaving the reef's fabric, giving it colour again. Their brilliance is fleeting. Within a few years, storms may tear them apart, or shifting sand may bury their roots. But in the meantime, they fill the ocean with a beauty so pure it feels borrowed from another world. To watch them is to witness impermanence made holy, to see how fragility can be a form of power. Under artificial light, Dendronephthia glows like stained glass. The translucent tissues reveal a universe within, veins, fibres, and tiny crystals glimmering like stars trapped in jelly. The coral seems almost sentient, breathing softly, pulsing with the rhythm of unseen tides. Photographers who film them in slow motion often describe the experience as watching the ocean think. In old maritime folklore, sailors believed that soft corals were the sea's dreams made visible. They said that when the ocean slept, it imagined gardens, and those gardens took form as corals. To disturb them was to wake the sea itself. When storms struck after divers tore away coral branches, old captains would whisper, "The sea is reclaiming her dreams." Science offers its own poetry. The coral's genus name, Dendronephthia, means tree of the kidneys, referring to the coral's branching organic form. But in truth, it might better be called the tree of breath. Every wave that passes through it becomes visible, every motion transformed into light. It does not resist the sea, it is the sea, alive, responsive, infinite. Even their death is gentle. When a soft coral breaks apart, the fragments drift away like petals in wind. Some settle elsewhere, attaching to rock and forming new colonies. Others dissolve completely, nourishing plankton that will feed future corals. Nothing is wasted. The garden feeds itself. If you float above such a field, the feeling is unlike anything else in the world. The water presses lightly against your skin. The coral moves below you in slow spirals. It's not like swimming. It's like dreaming. Your body drifts, your heartbeat slows, your breathing sinks with the current. You're no longer a visitor, you are part of the tide. In that silence, it's easy to forget where the coral ends and you begin. Your breath moves through the water, the coral sways with your exhale, light filters down, scattering across its soft branches like prayer flags in wind. You realize then that the sea is not a place, but a process. Not a body of water, but a body of breathing. And these corals, soft, luminous, impermanent, are the visible proof of that breath. When the current grows still and everything stops moving, the reef seems to hold its inhale. The corals rest, their colours deepening into shadow. You rise slowly toward the surface, leaving behind the garden that sways beneath the light. And as you drift upward, you carry the echo of their lesson with you. That gentleness is not weakness, that beauty does not need permanence, that life, at its most fragile, can still hold the entire sea inside it. Soft coral whispers, in every ripple, in every sway. We are all waves passing through each other, and the ocean, hearing this, breathes again. The ocean has a body, and this is its skin. Soft yet strong, breathing in folds and silence. It sheds, it heals, it endures the salt of centuries. Even the sea must renew itself. There is a kind of coral that feels alive when you touch it. Not hard like bone, not fragile like silk, but warm, textured, and faintly pulsing. It doesn't shimmer like the branching corals or sway like the soft ones. It sits steady on the seabed, wide and rounded, like the palm of a resting hand. This is leather coral, Sarcophyton glaucum, a being that breathes quietly beneath the waves, the sea's own living skin. From above, a leather coral looks almost alien. It forms a thick stalk that widens into a broad, flat top, shaped like a mushroom or a dish. The surface ripples gently as water moves over it. the texture somewhere between suede and velvet. When light passes through the surface, the coral's colour deepens. Pale green, tan, golden brown, or faintly bluish grey, depending on the algae that live inside it. Those algae, zooxanthellae, are the coral's heartbeat. They live within the tissue, transforming sunlight into food, feeding the coral from within. In return, the coral gives them a home and a constant rhythm, the rise and fall of its body with each tide. This partnership, delicate and ancient, allows leather corals to thrive in the bright, warm shallows of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. But what makes this coral remarkable is not just its form, it is its behaviour. For sarcophyton, to live is to renew. Every few weeks its surface begins to dull, covered with a thin layer of mucus and sediment. Then slowly it sheds its outer skin. The layer peels away in ribbons, drifting off into the water like translucent fabric. Beneath it, a new surface shines. Clean, smooth, vibrant. In that quiet act of shedding, the coral cleanses itself of parasites, dust and age. It is a rebirth so gentle you might miss it if you blink. Divers who watch this process describe it as eerie and beautiful. The coral seems to breathe deeper, its edges lifting and curling as if exhaling the old world. In those moments, it feels almost human. Something ancient wearing the gesture of renewal. Scientists studying the coral's biology have found that this shedding also stimulates growth, as if each act of letting go makes room for more life to begin. The surface of a leather coral is covered in thousands of tiny polyps. During the day they extend, forming a fuzzy carpet across the top. Each one is a miniature flower with 8 tentacles reaching toward the sun. Together they sway softly in the water, filtering plankton and particles, brushing the current like a field of golden grass. At night, they retract, vanishing into the coral's flesh, leaving the surface smooth again, a heartbeat of opening and closing that continues for decades. Its shape can grow large. Some colonies span more than a metre across. On a reef, a single leather coral can look like a plateau rising from the seabed, surrounded by schools of darting fish. Small shrimp crawl along its folds, cleaning it in exchange for shelter. Clownfish sometimes nestle nearby, using the coral's base as a nursery. Around it, the water feels warmer, thicker and slower, as though time itself moves differently there. Despite its name, leather coral is not tough in the way leather is on land. It is resilient, yes, but sensitive. It dislikes pollution and chemical imbalance. Too much light and it bleaches, too little and it starves. It needs flow, but not violence. When the balance is right, it thrives for decades, quietly cycling through birth, shedding and rebirth again. In a way, Sarcophyton glaucum is the reef's caretaker. Its tissues release natural compounds that deter aggressive neighbours, chemical messages that say, stay back. These mild toxins keep algae and fast-growing corals from invading its space. At the same time, the coral releases subtle perfumes into the water, biochemical signals that influence nearby species, encouraging them to grow in harmony. It is both protector and healer, regulating the chemistry of the small world around it. Underwater photographers love leather corals for their calm presence. When currents pass through them, the movement is slow and hypnotic, each ridge rising and falling like breath beneath a blanket. Under blue light, their surfaces glow faintly with gold and green fluorescence, resembling the surface of another planet. When you hover above one, it feels like looking down at a sleeping creature, half dreaming, half aware. In ancient Pacific tales, corals that shed were believed to embody the spirit of rebirth. Islanders said that the sea wore new skin each moon, the way snakes shed their scales or trees renew their leaves. The leather coral was its symbol, the visible proof that even the ocean must cleanse itself to stay alive. Scientists too have found inspiration in that shedding. Biomedical researchers study leather coral's ability to regenerate, hoping to unlock the secret of its perpetual renewal. Its tissues heal quickly, sealing wounds within hours. It can even recover from partial injury, rebuilding lost sections with the same pattern as before, like a song restarting exactly where it left off. And there's a scent to it, faint but real, a trace of salt and something earthy, like rain on stone. Divers say it's the smell of life underwater, the quiet pulse of the reef itself. That scent comes from the mucus it produces, a protective film filled with beneficial bacteria. It keeps infections away and even traps tiny particles of food. In every way, the leather coral is alive, aware, and in conversation with its environment. If you touch one gently, always with care and only where allowed, you can feel the slight resistance of living tissue. Beneath your fingertips, it flexes, reacting to your presence. You can sense its warmth, faintly pulsing beneath a layer of cool water. The experience is strangely grounding, like touching time itself. In the still water of dawn, when the sunlight filters through the surface and paints the reef in soft gold, leather corals shimmer like underwater meadows. Their wide caps ripple with reflected light, their surfaces breathing softly. The surrounding fish gather near, drawn to the safety of their calm. The entire reef seems to inhale and exhale with them. If you linger long enough, you might witness the moment when one begins to shed. The top darkens slightly. Then, with a slow, elegant motion, the thin outer film starts to lift. It peels away in translucent sheets, swirling upward in the water like pale smoke. Beneath it, the coral gleams renewed, fresh, clean, alive. The sea carries away the old, and what remains is something younger than before. There is something deeply human in that gesture, something we recognize even from above the waves. The act of renewal, the quiet courage of letting go. Leather coral teaches without words that to live well is to keep shedding what no longer serves, to cleanse oneself of the past not with fire but with stillness. That even the ocean's skin grows old and must fall away, and in doing so makes space for light to touch it again. Float above one now, watch its surface shimmer. The coral breathes, the sea moves through it. You breathe too, slowly, deeply, matching its rhythm. And for a moment, you understand. Life is not about permanence. It is about the grace of renewal. The ocean sheds, heals, and continues. And so do we. In the quiet depths, where sunlight is only a rumour, tiny crystal cups lift themselves toward the dark. They catch not wine, but the glow of the sea, a toast whispered in silence to survival. Far from the warm reefs and their golden forests, the sea grows cold and still. Here, there are no colours of fire, no bustling cities of fish, only shadow and the hum of water pressing against stone. It is in this solitude that cup coral, Caryophylla smithi, blooms like a garden of glass. Each coral is small, barely the size of a fingertip, yet together they cover the rocks in thousands. Their cups are pale amber, pink, or gold, glistening faintly under beams of distant light. From above, they look like miniature chalices, frozen mid-toast. But each one is alive, a solitary polyp feeding, breathing, enduring. Unlike most corals, cup coral does not form colonies. Every cup is its own being, an individual creature sculpting its own limestone chalice. Inside that delicate cup sits the polyp, translucent, soft, surrounded by a ring of tentacles like petals of a sea anemone. When the current brings food, the tentacles rise and curl inward, catching plankton so small it's nearly invisible. When danger approaches, the polyp retracts, sealing itself behind a wall of stone. It is a lonely life, and yet a beautiful one. Each coral stands apart, but together they form mosaics, patterns of light and symmetry stretching across the dark seabed. In the glow of a diver's lamp, they look like a city of candles burning under the water, each flame flickering in rhythm with the sea. Caryophylla smithi thrives in the cold, nutrient-rich waters of the North Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Some live at depths of only 10 metres, hidden under rocky ledges. Others descend to nearly 500 metres, where sunlight never reaches. There, they survive entirely on the generosity of the current, catching food in total darkness. In those depths, the water moves slowly. Sediment drifts like dust through an ancient room. The coral cups tilt slightly, their edges rimmed with delicate ridges that guide the flow of water into their centres. Each cup is a small masterpiece of engineering, its shape designed to capture the faintest passing nutrients. Even the smallest ripple through the water brings them life. They grow incredibly slowly, adding only a fraction of a millimetre each year. Some of the larger individuals are believed to be over a century old. The ridges of their skeletons record the passage of time like tree rings, narrow lines for lean years, wider for times when the current brought plenty. In this way, a single coral skeleton can tell the story of an entire century of ocean history. To the untrained eye, they may seem fragile, but cup corals are survivors of unimaginable change. They have endured ice ages, volcanic winters, and the long silence between tides. Where whole reefs have come and gone, they have remained. Small, steadfast, unbroken. When seen under ultraviolet light, their tentacles glow faintly blue and green, the pigments reflecting what little energy the sea offers. At night, their movements are hypnotic. The tentacles extend in slow, measured pulses, like breath expanding and contracting in the dark. It is not a chase, but a meditation, a life sustained by stillness. Marine biologists often call Caryophylla the jewel of the cold seas. It has inspired poets and divers alike, who describe it as the coral that carries a candle. Its quiet radiance feels intimate, as if the ocean were confiding a secret. Unlike the exuberant colour of tropical reefs, this beauty is subdued, inward, contemplative. When you watch a cup coral open its tentacles under gentle current, you realise how minimal life can be. No colonies, no crowds, just a single creature, repeating the same quiet ritual for decades. It waits, it feeds, it closes. It leaves behind a shell of stone, shaped like a chalice raised in gratitude. If you could listen closely enough, perhaps you'd hear them clinking together under the waves, thousands of tiny toasts offered to the darkness. In mythology, corals of the cold north were once believed to be the eyes of the drowned. Sailors thought that the glowing cups on the seabed were spirits watching the surface, shining dimly to guide lost souls home. When storms came and ships vanished, the survivors said the sea had lit its lanterns to welcome them below. There is truth buried in that story. The ocean's depths do keep memory. Each coral, through the chemicals locked in its skeleton, preserves traces of the water's temperature, salinity, and carbon content from the time it formed. In laboratories, scientists read these signals like hieroglyphs, reconstructing centuries of climate history. Caryophylla smithy becomes both witness and archive, its silent body recording the breath of the planet. Touch is rare in its world. No sunlight, no warmth, no great bursts of life, only the endless drift of plankton and silt. And yet, the coral endures. In every gesture, the curling of its tentacles, the slow building of its limestone walls, it speaks a language of persistence. It says, "I am enough, even alone." On certain winter dives off the coasts of Ireland or Norway, divers can still find cliffs covered with cup coral. The water there is near freezing, but in the beam of a flashlight the corals shimmer. The cups reflect the light like polished amber. The tentacles ripple faintly in the slow current. The divers' exhaled bubbles rise past them like pearls, and for a moment it feels as though the reef is alive with stars. It's hard not to see something sacred in it. These are cathedrals built for no worshippers, only for the sea itself. Every cup is an altar to survival, every tentacle, a prayer for another tide. Their quiet elegance hides a complexity of structure. The inner walls of each cup, called septa, are arranged in perfect radial symmetry, forming ridges that spiral toward the centre. It's a geometry shared by galaxies and flowers, the golden ratio written in calcium. The ocean repeats its patterns everywhere, even here, in these tiny goblets of light. If you hover above them long enough, you might see a crab scuttling between the cups, or a small fish resting on their rim. Sometimes plankton clouds drift past, and the coral field stirs to life, tentacles blooming like the slow opening of thousands of hands. It's a sight that makes you forget the cold pressing against your body, the darkness above. And if you stay long enough, you start to sense a strange peace, the kind that comes not from abundance, but from endurance. These corals ask for nothing more than the sea's slow breath. They take what passes by and turn it into light, into form, into the memory of existence. When you rise back toward the surface, leaving their golden field behind, the light from above feels harsh. The shallow reefs seem louder, busier, almost frantic by comparison. Down below, the cup corals continue their silent banquet, undisturbed by storms or seasons. Perhaps that's their final lesson, that beauty does not always need witnesses, and meaning does not require noise. The sea, even in its coldest rooms, keeps its own quiet celebrations. 1,000 crystal goblets lifted in slow, eternal cheers to the persistence of life, to the patience of light, to the art of simply enduring. Deep where the sun has never spoken, white walls rise from black silence. They gleam like frost under the pressure of centuries, cathedrals of the cold, built by hands that never felt the light. Far below the reach of day, where the ocean turns to midnight and the weight of the world presses endlessly down, there lies a city without sound. It stretches for miles across the dark, built of pale branches that glow faintly in the beams of submersible lights. These are the cold water corals, and their grandest architect is Laphelia pertusa, a creature that builds worlds in the dark. Unlike its tropical cousins, Laphelia lives where light cannot follow. At depths of 200 to 1,000 meters, and sometimes as deep as 3,000, it constructs vast reefs made not of color, but of bone-white stone. The water here hovers just above freezing, around 4 degrees Celsius. There are no photosynthetic algae, no bursts of daylight to power life. Everything survives on what drifts down from above, tiny flakes of carbon, the marine snow that falls eternally through the black. And yet, against all logic, the cold sea blooms. Each coral polyp of Laphelia pertusa is no larger than a fingertip. Alone, it is fragile, a translucent ring of tentacles with a soft mouth at its centre. But together they form immense colonies, their skeletons merging into labyrinths of calcium carbonate. Over centuries, these structures rise into towers and walls, some more than 30 kilometres long and tens of metres high. The result is a landscape both ghostly and grand, a reef as vast as a mountain range, built in total darkness. The colour of Laphelia is pure white when dead, but alive it glows faintly pink, cream, or amber, depending on the light of the submersible that passes above. In photographs, it looks like ice shaped by breath, softly luminous, impossibly delicate. Its branches twist in fractal patterns, repeating the geometry of frost on glass. Scientists exploring the Norwegian coast discovered some of the largest Laphelia reefs known to humankind. The Sula Ridge Reef, off central Norway, spans over 35 kilometres, larger than many human cities. It's estimated to be around 8,000 years old, still growing, still reshaping itself as generations of corals live, die, and build upon their bones. When researchers sent remotely operated vehicles into the dark, they found not emptiness but abundance. Fish weaving through the coral labyrinth, crabs scuttling across the towers, brittle stars and worms clinging to the branches like stars clinging to constellations. It is, as one marine biologist called it, the architecture of eternity. What makes Laphelia pertusa remarkable is its defiance of the ordinary rules of life. It has no sunlight, no warmth, and no steady source of energy. It builds where others perish. Its polyps feed by stretching their tentacles into the passing current, capturing bits of organic debris, the remains of life from upper waters. Each meal is microscopic, but every mouth feeds the next. The coral's metabolism is slow, its patience infinite. What tropical corals build in decades, Laphelia constructs in millennia. It grows so slowly that it becomes a memory made solid. Some colonies are estimated to be over 2,000 years old. Their foundations were laid before the fall of Rome, before the first human empires dreamed of stone, and still they endure, expanding silently in the dark. Cold water coral reefs exist not only in the North Atlantic, but also off the coasts of Scotland, Ireland, Greenland, the Gulf of Mexico, Japan, and New Zealand. Everywhere they are found, they create habitats in the otherwise barren deep, pockets of life carved from bone and shadow. Fish like cod and redfish gather there to spawn. Crabs, sea spiders, and brittle stars thrive among the branches. Even whales are drawn to the regions above them, where currents rich with nutrients swirl upward from the reef's edges. But these hidden cities are fragile. Their branches, though ancient, can shatter under the weight of a trawling net. The scrape of metal across the seafloor can destroy centuries of growth in seconds. Oil drilling, seabed mining, and acidification have already scarred many of the great reefs. Laphelia skeletons dissolve easily when ocean pH drops, an invisible corrosion that eats the very foundation of their world. To protect them, scientists have mapped these reefs in secrecy, giving them status as marine sanctuaries. Norway, the United Kingdom and Ireland have all banned bottom trawling in known Lophelia areas, turning those silent cities into protected cathedrals. But in many parts of the world, they remain uncharted, fragile empires still waiting in the dark. When cameras descend into a Lophelia forest for the first time, the footage looks like footage from another planet. The coral walls stretch upward in pale labyrinths, covered in strange creatures, sea spiders, brittle stars, deep-sea shrimp. Fish drift through arches of coral that have stood longer than human civilization. Sometimes a ray passes through, its wings glowing faintly as it brushes the tips of the branches. The light from the submersible casts long, trembling shadows. Everything moves slowly, deliberately, as though aware that time here does not rush. In the silence, the reef hums faintly, a vibration felt more than heard. Scientists call it ambient noise, the sound of currents moving through coral caverns, of fish echoing low frequencies in the dark. To the imagination, it feels like the heartbeat of the sea itself. The Lophelia Reef is not a monument to life's triumph. It is a monument to life's patience. It teaches that survival is not a race, but a rhythm. That beauty can exist where no eye sees it. That even in darkness, structure can grow, quietly, into something grand. In the mythology of the far north, sailors once spoke of ice gardens blooming beneath the waves, places where the spirits of drowned sailors built palaces of frost. When submersibles first filmed Lophelia in the 1980s, the site brought those myths back to life. The corals truly do resemble frozen cathedrals, arches of white where no light ever enters. Every reef begins with a single lava drifting through the dark. It settles on a rock, attaches, and begins to secrete limestone. Then it divides and divides again until a skeleton forms. When the parent dies, its body becomes the foundation for the next. Over centuries, the city grows, not by conquest but by inheritance. Each generation builds upon the bones of the one before, their architecture layered like memory itself. And perhaps that is what makes Lophelia Pertusa so profoundly moving. It is the sea remembering itself. It builds not to be seen, but simply because that is what life does. It continues. It endures. If you could stand on the seafloor beside one of these ancient reefs, your light would barely touch its edges. The coral towers would fade into darkness, their shapes dissolving into the black. The water would be cold enough to numb your hands, silent enough to make your heartbeat sound like thunder. And in that stillness you would understand, the ocean does not need sunlight to dream. It dreams in silence, in patience, in the architecture of endurance. The world above may rise and fall, empires may vanish. But in the deep, Lophelia Pertusa keeps building, slowly, ceaselessly, turning death into stone, stone into life, and life into something eternal. Breathe slowly. Imagine the sound of water pressing against a wall of white coral. That is the sound of the planet's oldest city still standing. No towers of gold, no voices, just stone, cold, and time. The city of ice continues to grow, even as the world above forgets it exists. Long before we had eyes to see the sea, the ocean bloomed and folded into rock. Now the waves that once sang through coral whisper only through stone. Walk along a limestone cliff on a quiet shore and you might see them. Patterns frozen in the rock, circular and floral, like the cross-sections of vanished flowers. They look too perfect to be chance, too delicate to be time's accident. These are fossil corals, the ancient ghosts of reefs that lived hundreds of millions of years ago when fish had no bones and continents still drifted like clouds. Their most famous name is Lithostrontian juncium, a coral that once built cities before the world we know was even imagined. To the untrained eye, a fossil coral looks like an ornament etched into stone. But each pattern, each petal, each honeycomb is the preserved skeleton of a polyp, a creature that once waved its tiny tentacles in a sea older than any mountain now standing. Their lives ended before the first birds took flight, yet their shapes remain, perfectly printed in the pages of the earth. The name Lithostrontian comes from Greek, lithos meaning stone and strotion, meaning bed or layer. It was literally a bed of stone. They lived during the Carboniferous period, about 340 million years ago, when vast warm seas covered what would one day become Europe and North America. Back then, the air was thick with oxygen, Forests of giant ferns rose along the shores, and strange marine creatures drifted in the depths. Among them, these corals flourished, building colossal reefs that rivaled the modern Great Barrier Reef in scale. Their world was different. The continents were fused together into a single supercontinent called Pangaea. The oceans were shallow, warm, and rich in minerals. The reefs of Lithostratian grew not from the equator's warmth, but from the planet's breath, an era when Earth itself seemed young enough to dream in colour. Each Lithostratian coral built a skeleton of limestone, composed of countless tubular segments, like the pipes of an organ. In life, the coral's surface would have shimmered with soft, translucent flesh, its polyps opening like flowers across the reef's face. In death, those bodies dissolved, leaving behind the mineral imprint of their architecture. Over millions of years, sediment buried them. Pressure and heat transformed their limestone into marble and chert. Their bodies became time itself, stone carrying the pattern of something that once breathed. Hold a piece of fossil coral in your hand and you are touching a heartbeat from before the age of dinosaurs. Its surface feels cool, dense, and heavy with silence. Yet when polished, it gleams with patterns, rings, ridges, tiny hexagonal chambers that look like lace frozen in amber. Jewelers in Asia once carved these fossils into amulets, believing they contained the memory of the sea. To wear one was to carry protection against storms and sorrow. In the temples of Thailand and Sri Lanka, fossil coral, known as petrified flower or ocean lotus, is used as a charm for meditation. In medieval Europe, monks carved it into rosaries, saying that touching the stone connected them to the first creation. Across cultures, people felt the same truth without needing to name it, that these stones were alive once, and that they still hold the echo of something sacred. For scientists, Lithostratian junceum is more than a relic. It is a diary. Its chemical composition tells the story of ancient oceans, how warm they were, how salty, how alive. By studying the oxygen isotopes within its skeleton, researchers can reconstruct the temperature of seas that vanished 300 million years ago. Fossil corals are the ocean's long-term memory, written not in ink but in calcium. Yet beyond their scientific value, there is something deeply poetic about their existence. Imagine an animal so delicate it could die from a touch, yet its shape lasts longer than empires. Imagine millions of years passing, continents shifting, volcanoes rising, ice covering the world, and still its pattern remains, perfectly preserved in the rock. It is immortality by accident, beauty caught in geology's slow breath. On certain beaches in Morocco and the American Midwest, you can find entire cliffs made of ancient coral reefs. The stone looks ordinary until you look closely. Waves and spirals like the fossilized music of the sea. Each fossil is a note in that eternal composition. Each ridge a memory of tides that once crashed there when the planet's heartbeat was different. Divers who explore fossilized reef walls describe a strange feeling, swimming through the remains of an ocean within the ocean. The living fish drift through the shapes of their ancestors, the new sea meeting the old. It is as if time itself folds there, layer over layer, life over death over life again. In some parts of the Caribbean, fossil coral has been used in construction. Old cathedrals and forts are built from it, their walls containing millions of ancient skeletons. When rain falls on them, the stone seems to weep salt. Visitors who rest their hands against those walls sometimes feel a faint coolness, as if the sea is still there, breathing behind the stone. What makes Lithostratian junceum haunting is its silence. It does not shout its story, it waits to be seen. The patterns on its surface are not decoration, they are memory. Each line, each chamber is an echo of a creature that once opened itself to the current, filtering plankton and sunlight in the warm, shallow water. Every fossil is an act of trust. The coral gave itself to time, and time gave it permanence. In ancient Chinese lapidary texts, fossil coral was said to embody tranquility born of struggle. It was a symbol for those who endured loss but emerged wiser. To meditate upon it was to remember that all things pass but not all things vanish. Some become foundation. When the wind passes through limestone caves today, it hums faintly. Scientists call it air pressure. Poets might call it the sea remembering how to sing. That sound, echoing through the hollows once filled with coral polyps, is a ghost of breath from another age. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it now, the faint resonance of the world as it was, before mammals, before mountains, the whisper of tides through a coral forest now turned to stone. You might hold a fossil coral in your palm and feel, just for a second, the impossible distance between its first breath and yours, and then realize you are both made of the same sea, the same minerals, the same patient chemistry of life. You are the continuation of its memory. That realization is humbling and gentle. The fossil coral teaches that nothing is truly lost. Everything becomes something else. What was soft becomes strong. What was fragile becomes eternal. The ocean never forgets what it once loved. So, as you walk the shore and pick up a small piece of patterned stone, remember, it is not dead. It is sleeping. It has been dreaming for 300 million years, and through your touch, it wakes for a moment, to feel the warmth of sunlight again. The night is never truly dark beneath the waves. Something always glows, a heartbeat, a whisper, a secret the sea tells itself in light. When the moon is hidden and the surface of the sea turns black, the reef below begins to glow. It is not sunlight returning, nor fire from above. It is life itself, shining from within. Out of every crack, every curve of stone, faint glimmers rise like stars trembling in the water. This is the realm of bioluminescent corals, and among them, one of the most mesmerizing is Montipora digitata, the coral that makes its own dawn. At first glance, it looks simple. A branching coral with finger-like structures reaching outward in gentle spirals. But in the darkness, those fingers begin to pulse. Greens, blues, purples and yellows flow through them, as if veins carried light instead of blood. Under ultraviolet light, they come alive completely, waves of colour rolling across their surface like breath made visible. The secret lies deep in their cells. Montipora digitata produces special proteins, green fluorescent proteins, or GFPs, that convert invisible wavelengths of light into visible ones. In essence, it transforms darkness into colour. The energy from the sea's faintest glow is caught and re-emitted, painting the coral in spectral tones. These proteins, discovered in corals and jellyfish, have changed not only the way we see the ocean, but also the way science studies life. Today, they're used in laboratories to trace the workings of human cells, making the pulse of biology visible. The coral's light, once born in the deep, now illuminates the mysteries of our own bodies. But in its natural world, light is not decoration, it is defense. The glow serves as a shield, absorbing harmful rays and releasing them harmlessly as colored light. It is also communication. The coral's faint shimmer attracts algae, those microscopic partners that photosynthesize within its tissues. Together they form an alliance of color, the algae feeding the coral with sugar and oxygen, the coral protecting them with radiant skin. In the Great Barrier Reef, divers often describe the experience of swimming through a Montipora field at night as wandering inside a galaxy. Thousands of corals, each pulsing with faint bioluminescence, create a star field that seems to float around you. When fish pass, their movements trigger ripples of light, like meteors streaking through a living sky. Even the sound changes. The ocean feels quieter, more reverent, as if aware of its own beauty. If you look closely, you'll notice that the light is not constant. It flickers, slows, strengthens, then fades again. The coral's glow follows its own rhythm, synchronized with the tide, the moon, and even with each other. Scientists studying them have discovered that neighbouring colonies often pulse in harmony, a silent choir of light beneath the waves. This bioluminescence is ancient. Long before humans built fires or cities, the ocean was already glowing. It was the first night light of the planet. From plankton to squid to corals, countless species learned to use light as language. For the coral, it is both armour and art, a testament to the sea's quiet intelligence. The sight of bioluminescent coral has always inspired awe, but also introspection. For centuries, sailors reported seeing fiery reefs beneath their ships, believing they had stumbled upon underwater volcanoes or the souls of drowned sailors. When they tried to reach them, the light would vanish, only to return farther away. What they were seeing was the glow of living corals disturbed by waves, a vast breathing constellation hidden below. To witness it now, with modern eyes and diving lights turned off, is still to be humbled. Imagine floating 30 feet above the reef. Everything is black except the dim aura of your instruments. Then, as your eyes adjust, the reef begins to appear, a soft blue-green radiance curling along the coral's ridges, like veins of fire running through marble. It's not enough to see by, but enough to feel. You sense the presence of something living, gentle, aware. The effect is hypnotic. The longer you stay, the more you see. The faint pulses along the coral's edges, the sudden burst of brighter green as a fish brushes past, the slow fade as calm returns. Each event is an act of energy, each flicker a heartbeat. The reef, which seemed still in daylight, is now alive with movement and light. Breathing, signalling, remembering. There is also a scientific beauty in how it works. The GFP molecules within the coral absorb high-energy blue and ultraviolet photons. Instead of letting that energy burn the cells, the protein releases it as visible green or yellow light. It is an act of transformation, destruction turned into illumination, life learning to turn pain into colour. In that sense, Montipora digitata is not just a coral, it is a metaphor for survival itself. It shines precisely where it should be darkest. During coral spawning events, when the ocean fills with floating eggs and sperm, Montipora's fluorescence intensifies. Divers have seen entire colonies glow brighter, as if signalling to others, now. The synchronization is perfect. Thousands of corals releasing life at once, guided by the moon, the temperature, and the slow pulse of light through water. The sea, in those moments, becomes a cathedral of birth and colour. The beauty of bioluminescent coral is also fragile. Pollution, sediment, and rising ocean temperatures can dim their glow, disrupting the delicate symbiosis that sustains it. Without their algae, the corals lose not only their food, but also the energy that feeds their fluorescence. The light fades first, long before the coral dies. In the darkness that follows, the reef feels suddenly empty, as though someone has turned off the stars. And yet, when the ocean heals, the light returns. Slowly, faintly, the first glimmers appear on the branches. It is a quiet resurrection, visible proof that recovery is possible. The coral does not forget how to shine. It only waits for the right conditions to do so again. Some divers, after long nights among glowing reefs, describe the experience as spiritual. It's like watching the soul of the sea, one said. You don't see the animals, you see their essence. The light reveals not shape but connection, the way energy flows between every living thing. In that glow, the reef stops being separate species and becomes a single breathing organism made of countless hearts beating together in silence. In some island traditions, these lights were said to be the ocean's dreams escaping through cracks. Fishermen once followed them to guide their canoes home. The glow along the reef line was a map, a promise, a beacon. It meant safety, nourishment, and life. If you could see the reef from far above, it would look like a pulse of green fire across the black ocean floor, a heartbeat larger than continents. It is the planet itself remembering how to glow. And perhaps that is what bioluminescent coral truly represents. Not just survival, but joy. The joy of being alive, of finding light within oneself when the world outside offers none. So when you imagine it now, the coral glowing softly in the deep, breathe with it. Picture the light not as decoration, but as breath. The ocean exhales, the coral shines, you inhale, you glow. Everything is connected by light, even in the dark, and the coral, shining like a quiet soul beneath the waves, whispers what every living thing has always known. We carry our own dawn inside us. The sea remembers what was taken from her, and now, gently, human hands remember too. We plant stones where colour once lived, and hope that the ocean will dream again. In many places the reefs are quiet now, where once the sea burned with colour, where parrotfish grazed, and clownfish danced, and coral polyps bloomed in tides of gold. There is only grey. The skeletons remain, brittle and hollow. The ocean's great cities have fallen silent, but not forever. Because across the world, divers, scientists and villagers have begun to rebuild the sea. One small breath, one fragment of coral, one spark of patience at a time. These are the artificial corals, The reef restoration modules, the human attempt to help the ocean remember how to heal. They are not alive when they are placed, just shapes of concrete, steel or limestone carved into domes, pyramids and arches. But once the water moves through them, once the light touches them, once the first coral fragment clings to their surface, life returns. The ocean begins again. A reef restoration site looks like a strange underwater garden. Rows of concrete domes rise from the sand, each pitted with holes to mimic natural coral crevices. Some are shaped like trees, with branches reaching upward to hold coral fragments. Others look like sculptures, rings, stars, spirals, designed not just to restore the reef but to remind those who visit that rebuilding can be beautiful. Each structure is placed carefully, following maps of currents, light, and temperature. Scientists measure salinity and oxygen levels, searching for the perfect balance. Then divers descend, carrying pieces of coral, small fragments cut from healthy reefs nearby. Using epoxy, cable ties, or biodegradable clips, they attach the coral to the structure. In weeks, the polyps begin to extend. In months, the fragments fuse. In years, the grey of concrete turns green, purple, orange, alive again. It is slow work, sometimes painfully slow. The ocean does not rush, and the coral knows no hurry. Growth comes at the pace of patience, a centimetre a year, sometimes less. But the results are astonishing. In places like Indonesia, the Maldives, and the Philippines, artificial reefs have transformed barren seabeds into thriving sanctuaries. Within 2 years, hundreds of species return: fish, sea cucumbers, turtles, even small sharks. The water clears, the currents calm, and the silence breaks into the soft crackle of a living reef once more. The materials vary. Some reefs are built from concrete mixed with volcanic sand, shaped to mimic the roughness of natural limestone. Others use ceramic domes, which do not leach toxins. In Florida and the Caribbean, reef balls, round, hollow modules the size of small cars, have become the new architecture of life. In the Maldives, metal frames coated with minerals encourage coral larvae to attach naturally. Off Thailand's coast, even 3D printers are used to create intricate coral-shaped blocks, perfectly designed for baby polyps to settle. And so, under the waves, humanity plants its first true gardens, not of soil, but of memory. It is a strange reversal of fate. For centuries, humans harvested coral, crushed it, mined it for lime, jewellery, or stone. Our cities were built on their bones. Now, in a rare gesture of humility, we are returning those bones to the sea, hoping to give back what was lost. One diver working on a restoration project in Bali described the experience like this: you plant them and you don't know if they'll live. But then, months later, you dive again, and they've grown. You see fish sleeping inside, sea urchins hiding under the arches. You realise you've built a heartbeat. In many reefs, local communities have joined these efforts. Fishermen who once depended on coral for income now protect it. Children snorkel through artificial gardens, learning to count fish and measure coral health. Tourism has shifted from taking to tending. Some islands have turned their restored reefs into underwater classrooms, where new divers learn not to touch but to observe, to listen. There is something deeply symbolic about it all. Concrete and steel, materials of industry, of cities, sink beneath the water, only to be claimed by life again. The ocean, indifferent to human pride, wraps its arms around these intrusions and turns them gentle. Algae bloom first, then sponges, then coral larvae settle. In a few seasons, the lines between natural and artificial blur. A fish cannot tell which stone was human and which was born of time. Life does not care about origin, it only asks for a surface to begin again. In one of the most poetic projects in the Philippines, artists carved thousands of small sculptures shaped like coral skeletons, each engraved with the name of a person who donated to the reef's restoration. Divers placed them across a desolate seabed. Today, the site is a living memorial, a reef of names and colour, where every engraved stone supports new coral growth. The ocean, in its slow forgiveness, has turned remembrance into rebirth. Technology, too, has found its way into this gentle work. Drones map damaged reefs from above, while AI-powered sensors monitor temperature and acidity. In some regions, coral nurseries are suspended like floating gardens, grids of ropes where young coral fragments are grown before being transplanted to the seafloor. Even robots have begun to help, scattering coral larvae across vast areas, giving the sea a million tiny chances to heal. But even the most advanced science cannot replace what these projects truly depend on: patience and faith. Coral restoration is not just an ecological act, it is emotional. It asks us to remember that recovery takes time and that what is broken can still be made whole. Slowly, quietly, beautifully. Underwater, time feels different. When divers return to check on their artificial reefs, they often describe the first signs of life with reverence. The touch of a sea anemone on new coral, the shimmer of a damselfish hiding between pillars, the sound, the faint crackle known as the song of a healthy reef returning. These are the ocean's small blessings, invisible to those above the surface but enormous to those who listen. Artificial reefs are not perfect. Some fail, some collapse under storms, some attract invasive species. Yet even in failure, they teach us. Each sunken structure is a lesson in coexistence, a question about how to help without controlling, how to guide without owning. The sea accepts what is humble and rejects what is forced. The reefs that thrive are the ones that work with the ocean's rhythm, not against it. When you look at footage of a restored reef years later, the difference is astonishing. What was once grey concrete now teems with movement. Coral branches rise where there was once only sand. Fish glide through arches of stone that now glow with life. It looks, in truth, like a cathedral that has learned to breathe again. And above all, it feels hopeful. Perhaps that is the true gift of artificial coral. Not the structures themselves, but the reminder that restoration is possible. That even the most damaged ecosystems can recover if given care, patience, and love. That healing does not belong to gods or time. It belongs to hands willing to try. In the still water of evening, when the divers ascend and the sea settles again, the reef glows faintly under the setting sun. The new corals sway with the current. A turtle drifts past, brushing its shell against the fresh branches. Somewhere in the distance, a whale's call echoes, a low, endless note of life continuing. The ocean for a moment seems to sigh, not in pain, but in relief. And beneath the waves, in those quiet gardens we've built back, the first polyp opens, stretching its tiny translucent arms to the current, catching light again. The sea breathes, the world remembers, the garden lives. There are places in the ocean where time no longer moves, where coral stands, pale and hollow like statues carved from moonlight. It is not death you see there, only the long pause before rebirth. In the silence between waves, there are reefs that no longer sing. The water is still clear, the fish still pass, the sand still shifts, but the sound, the electric crackle of a living reef, is gone. When you dive there, it feels like entering a cathedral emptied of prayer. The shapes remain, branching forms, boulder domes, fragile fans, but all are white, motionless, stripped of the living tissue that once shimmered with light. These are the coral graveyards, the places where colour sleeps. The transformation from life to silence begins invisibly. Coral bleaching, as scientists call it, starts when the sea grows just a little too warm. A degree or two higher than usual, and the delicate balance within the coral collapses. The algae, the tiny symbiotic partners that feed the coral with photosynthesis, begin to flee. Without them, the coral's translucent flesh turns transparent, revealing the white skeleton beneath. For a while, the coral still lives. It still breathes, still reaches for light. But if the heat lingers, hunger comes. The coral starves, and the reef begins to fade. A bleached coral is not yet dead. It is a ghost of itself, holding on in silence. Divers describe the sight as beautiful and terrible. Endless plains of pale ivory, stretching across the seafloor, reflecting light like bone. The sea glows softly above them, but no shadow moves. The fish have left. The anemones have withered. The silence is total. When the Great Barrier Reef experienced its first mass bleaching in the late 1990s, few understood what they were witnessing. It seemed impossible that something so immense, 2,300 kilometers long, visible from space, could die from mere warmth. But the ocean's threshold for change is delicate. Since then, bleaching has struck again and again in 2016, 2017, 2020, 2022. Entire regions have turned pale, then grey, then gone silent. The reefs that took thousands of years to build can unravel in a single summer, and yet, even in death, they do not vanish completely. Their skeletons remain, cities without citizens, architecture without breath. These bone-white landscapes form the coral graveyards, haunting in their stillness. Scientists visit them not only to mourn, but to study. In the patterns of ruin, they find the traces of resilience, small pockets of coral that survived, polyps that clung to the shade, fragments that resisted the heat. These remnants are seeds of the future. They will one day repopulate the sea if given a chance. Walking, or rather swimming, through a coral graveyard feels like wandering through time itself. The light seems slower there. The water feels heavier. You can see where life once was. A burst of pink that used to be Acropora, a mound that once hosted a family of clownfish. Now everything is still, like the negative of a memory. But nature, even in silence, does not end. It waits. Some corals recover if temperatures drop soon enough. The algae return, colour floods back, and life resumes its slow rhythm. In the Maldives, scientists recorded reefs that came back to life after 2 years of apparent death. In other places, the regrowth took longer, a decade, even 2. The skeletons became scaffolds for new generations. The dead cities turned nurseries again. Still, there are graveyards too deep, too vast to heal on their own. Around them, conservationists have placed artificial modules and coral nurseries, small efforts to help the ocean rebuild its memory. In some places, coral fragments have been transplanted directly onto the skeletons of their ancestors. The result is almost poetic. Life literally taking root in death, colour blooming through the bones of what once was. For divers, these places hold a melancholy beauty. The light moves differently here, diffused by the pale stone. It feels like diving through snow. When you touch the coral, if you dare, it crumbles like chalk. Yet even in ruin, it is elegant. Each pattern, each ridge, carved by centuries of quiet work. The sea does not waste its architecture. It only rearranges it. Marine biologists sometimes call these skeletons the reef's archives. In the rings of coral growth, they can read the story of the ocean, floods, droughts, volcanic winters, human impact. The coral keeps records better than we do. It remembers every storm. But the coral graveyards are not just scientific sites. They are emotional ones. For coastal communities that depend on reefs for fishing, food and protection, the loss is not abstract. The sea that fed them now lies silent. In Fiji, villagers speak of white death, the moment the sea turned pale. In Hawaii, divers held ceremonies over bleached reefs, placing layers of native flowers on the water's surface as an apology. Even among those who never see the ocean, the coral's disappearance reaches us. The reefs feed millions, shelter coastlines, and filter the planet's breath. Without them, waves grow stronger, storms hit harder, hunger spreads faster. The coral graveyards are not just underwater, they are warnings written in stone. And yet to stare at them is also to witness resilience in disguise. The reef does not rage, does not collapse in noise. It fades quietly, patiently, as though trusting that time will one day return what was taken. When you swim above a dead reef, the silence feels heavy. But if you listen closely, there are faint signs of persistence. A lone parrotfish chewing on algae, a snail creeping across the white. Life, still searching for a foothold. Scientists are now collecting the toughest coral genotypes, the ones that survived bleaching events, to grow in nurseries. These supercorals are then transplanted back into the graveyards, hoping to restore them. It is a slow resurrection, but one that feels deeply human. We are finally trying to repair what we broke. In the future, some of these graveyards may indeed return to colour. Others will remain monuments, reminders of what happens when warmth and neglect meet in silence. Either way, they hold meaning. They teach us that beauty can be fragile, and that every colour on earth is borrowed, never owned. The coral graveyard is not a place of despair. It is a threshold between what was and what could be again. Imagine standing on a ship above such a place. The The sea looks calm, indifferent, but below a labyrinth of pale towers stretches toward the surface. They are not ruins, they are invitations. The bones of the reef whisper to the water above, "Bring back the light, bring back the life," and perhaps one day the ocean will listen. When it does, the first sign will not be loud. It will begin as a shimmer, a faint blush of colour across a white branch, a tiny polyp stretching out its arms again, then another, then thousands. Until one morning, when the tide turns just right, the grey will give way to gold again. Colour will return, quietly, like dawn rising under the sea, and the graveyard will vanish, not by being forgotten, but by being forgiven. In the dark water, the smallest flowers still open. Some shine, some sleep, some wait. Every heartbeat of the sea remembers, and so will we. The ocean is quieter now. The waves roll with the same rhythm as breathing, slow, endless, kind. If you listen closely, beneath the sigh of water and the drift of sand, you can almost hear it, the soft hum of a living planet stitched together by coral, salt, and light. We began this journey among the living cities of the sea, those silent architects called corals who build worlds without sound. Their bodies are small, fragile, barely visible, and yet they raise mountains underwater. Every reef you've imagined tonight began with a single polyp, a creature no larger than a grain of rice, stretching upward, reaching for sunlight through the weight of the ocean. It is strange to think that the world's largest living structures are made not of noise but of patience. As you drift in thought now, imagine what that means. That strength, real strength, may not be about size or speed, but about endurance, the quiet persistence of life choosing to build, even in darkness. Every coral we met in this long ocean dream has a different way of telling that story. The elkhorn and staghorn corals, reaching out like forests of light, the brain coral, remembering centuries of storms, the fire coral, burning even underwater, the blue coral, keeping its impossible colour for 1,000 years, the black coral, whispering in the deep where no sunlight ever falls, the red coral whose blood-red branches once guarded sailors at sea, the organ pipe coral, whose empty skeleton hums when the current passes through, the bubble coral breathing softly in its sleep, the sea fan waving endlessly like the hand of the ocean itself. And then came the others, soft, translucent, radiant, sun corals that bloom in darkness, leather corals that shed their skin to live anew, cold water corals building frozen cathedrals at the edge of the abyss. All of them together, billions of tiny beings, forming what we call the reef. But really it is more than that. It is a memory network, one that connects the sea to the sky, the light to the shadow, the human heart to the pulse of the planet. When corals breathe, the earth breathes. When they fade, the earth holds its breath. And yet, even in their fading, there is something miraculous, because every bleaching, every death, every silence leaves behind a possibility, a space where new coral might settle, where light might touch stone again. Nature, unlike us, does not give up. It pauses. It waits for a reason to begin once more. That is what the artificial reefs teach us, that we too can choose to rebuild. That brokenness is not the end of the story, that we can be gardeners of life, not just witnesses of loss. Underwater, there are now hundreds of coral nurseries. Long lines of rope sway gently in the current, each holding a fragment of coral, growing quietly in its cradled place. Scientists visit them like caretakers, cleaning algae, measuring growth, whispering to the sea through their movements. The sight is humble and holy, proof that care, repeated enough times, becomes resurrection. And maybe that is the lesson the ocean has been singing all along, that everything living must one day fall silent, but silence itself is not the end. It is the beginning of listening. If you could float now, weightless, above a reef at night, you would see this truth glowing beneath you. Tiny points of bioluminescence shimmer like scattered stars. A shrimp flickers past, leaving a trail of green fire. The coral polyps open their small translucent arms, catching light and plankton together. The sea hums, low and deep, like the earth's own lullaby. And in that stillness you might realize something. That we too are made of the same patience, the same salt, the same calcium, the same fragile hope that builds layer upon layer until it becomes something strong enough to outlive its maker. We are not separate from the reef. We are one of its dreams, dreams that learn to walk on land. Perhaps that is why watching the coral die hurts us so deeply. Because on some quiet level we understand that it is part of us fading too. The coral builds the sea builds the sky, and the sky gives us the breath we use to whisper its name. The ocean's grief is our own, but tonight there is peace in knowing that life endures. Even when colour fades, memory does not. Even when silence falls, song returns. In the far corners of the Pacific, there are reefs reborn from fragments no larger than a coin. In the Caribbean, baby corals cling to the bones of their ancestors, growing stronger with each tide. In the Arctic, deep water corals continue to bloom beneath ice, untouched by light, unseen but alive. And in laboratories on land, scientists nurture coral embryos under artificial stars, preparing them for a future ocean, one we still have time to protect. It is not too late. The reef, like the world, responds to care. So if you are still awake, let your thoughts drift as the tide drifts. Breathe as the coral breathes. Each inhale a wave, each exhale a returning tide. Picture the sea beneath you, vast, luminous, infinite. Picture the coral gardens glowing softly, the fish weaving through them like threads of colour in a cosmic fabric. Picture your heartbeat syncing with theirs, slow, gentle, eternal. In this shared rhythm there is forgiveness. The sea does not hold grudges, it holds memory, and memory, when tended, becomes love. One day, perhaps, our descendants will dive where we once stood and see the ocean bright again. Ribbons of red and blue and gold swaying in the light. They will run their hands along the stone that once was bone, and the sea will sing again, quietly, joyfully, as it did long before us. When that day comes, no one will remember the sorrow, only the patience and the light. So now, as you close your eyes, imagine yourself lying upon a circular reef, soft and round like the heart of the ocean itself. The water is warm, the current is slow. Around you, millions of tiny polyps pulse gently, exhaling bubbles of life. The sea's breath becomes your breath, the pulse of coral becomes your pulse, and slowly the boundary between your body and the ocean dissolves. You're no longer watching the reef. You are part of it, a living thought, a soft light, a small act of endurance in a vast, dreaming sea. The ocean exhales, and you drift deeper into sleep, carried not by waves, but by memory. Good night, traveller. The reef will keep breathing for you.